Chapter 1369. Senior, come over and apply the wound, Fengjiu said without raising her head. Oh. The old man came back to his senses and looked at the long wound. His heart twitched, and he could only go forward to help her. Every time blood gushed out, he would use a clean cloth with tweezers to wipe the blood clean, so that the doctor could see clearly when she was cutting. The few people at the side watched with their hearts tightened and sweat seeped out of their foreheads. However, Fengjiu's expression was indifferent and her actions were calm. She wore a mask and was very careful when she cut. When she found the location of the fragments in the wound, she took them out bit by bit. When they saw that the fragments were taken out, they couldn't help but secretly breathe a sigh of relief. They couldn't tell that this brat had some real skills. After about an hour, after the rotten flesh was removed, Fengjiu put the small knife aside and took out a needle and thread from her space to sew the wound. What are you doing with this needle and thread? The old man in gray couldn't help but ask, his brows furrowed. Sewing the wound. She said it as a matter of course, but it shocked the few people at the side. What? Sewing the wound. As soon as he said that, he saw her sewing the wound with the needle and thread. Seeing her sewing the flesh as if it was clothes, the few people were shocked. This can be done. Okay, the stitches will be removed in 7 days. The wound treatment is done, but... She looked at the stunned people at the side and laughed. But what? The few people couldn't help but follow her words and ask. But you haven't cured the poison in his body. Moreover, the wound has been treated, but he will have a fever tonight. This fever can be big or small. If he can't endure it, then all your efforts will be in vain. Hearing this, the few people looked at each other. In the end, it was the old doctor who asked, then what is this little brother's solution? After seeing his technique, he was full of admiration for this young man. One had to know that even he couldn't stitch the flesh without changing his expression, but he was calm and composed. This kind of temperament, this kind of cultivation, was extraordinary. I have medicine. Do you want to buy it? She smiled and squinted her eyes. After taking my medicine, the poison in his body will be gone in 4 hours. After taking my medicine, there won't be a problem even if he has a fever tonight. Seeing the gray-robed old man's disapproving expression, she smiled and said, my medicine is different from yours. It can't be found outside. You have to think carefully. If you miss out on me, you won't have a chance to find me again. What medicine is so powerful? How much? I'll buy it. The gray-robed old man said. He felt that this poor kid's item wasn't worth much. After he got it, he would let someone test it. After confirming that there were no problems and that it was effective, he could give it to the young master and I. How can I be wrong? This is something I personally refined. Could it be that my medical skills are not enough to prove that my medicine is very effective? Fengjiu raised his eyebrows and glanced at him. Chapter 1370. Seeing this, the old man's face darkened as he said to Fengjiu, where's the medicine? Give it to me. I gave you the money and the goods at the same time. Fengjiu had already walked to the side to wash his hands, and the unconscious person had already been pushed into the inner room. Little brother, let's talk outside, the old doctor said as he invited Fengjiu outside. Thus, other than a few people who stayed in the room to guard, the few of them went outside to sit by the stone table. The servant served the tea and then left. Little brother, the stitches you just sewed. You can remove it after 7 days. Fengjiu took off her mask and put it away. Then, she took a sip of tea. Then what about the medicine you mentioned? Can you let me take a look? The old doctor asked. Fengjiu thought for a while and nodded, that's fine too. She took out 2 bottles from her sleeves and placed them on the table. Looking at the special transparent bottles and the liquid inside, the old doctor was slightly surprised. His heart skipped a beat as he opened it and took a sniff. With one sniff, his eyes lit up. This is good stuff. Little brother, do you have more of these? When the old man saw this, he took the bottles and looked at them suspiciously. With one look, his expression changed slightly as he asked in surprise, "Did you really make these? Didn't you want to buy them? Here it is." She pointed at the 2 bottles of medicine and said, "Give me the money. Also, where's my friend? Your friend has been taken care of by our people." The old man in gray said slowly, "We can give you the money, but you can't leave yet." "What?" Fengjiu raised her eyebrows and raised her voice. "My young master hasn't woken up yet, how can you leave? What if he doesn't wake up?" "Pfft. So you're saying that you want me to stay for a few more days?" She glanced at the 2 of them and said, "Little brother, how about this? You stay and take care of the young master, we won't let you work for nothing." The old doctor said as he looked at Fengjiu and smiled, "Also, your medical skills are better than mine. If you can stay, we can rest assured. Didn't I say that he'll be fine? He'll wake up in 1 or 2 days at most. He'll take my medicine, he won't die." She rolled her eyes, speechless. She didn't plan to stay here for long. Moreover, if she stayed here for a few more days, she would definitely be delayed on the road. "You don't have the final say. Wait until my young master wakes up," the gray-robed old man said firmly. Seeing this, Fengjiu's eyes flickered. He thought for a moment and said with a smile, "All right, then I'll stay. However, my friend is injured and weak. Help me hire a carriage and send him back first." Hearing this, the 2 looked at each other and nodded. Sure. As long as they could keep this brat, it would be fine. In any case, they only needed him, and the other one was dispensable. "All right, it's settled then. Next, pay me the money first." She pointed at the 2 bottles of liquid medicine. Hearing this, the old man in gray called out and a middle-aged man appeared. He said to Fengjiu, "Come with me." Fengjiu shrugged and didn't care about being treated lightly. He got up and left with the middle-aged man. After he left, the 2 old men started talking. "Is this kid's medical skills really better than yours?" the old man in gray asked. Chapter 1371. At noon, in front of the clinic. "Zhu Yu, you go home first. Remember to pay me the money you owe me. I'll ask you for it when I come over." Fengjiu patted him on the shoulder and said with a smile. "Then you're really not going? Is it really okay to stay here?" Zhu Yu asked worriedly. "It's okay. The seniors here take good care of me. Besides, I'm also an idle person who travels everywhere. It's not a problem for me to stay here for 10 days or half a month. But your body hasn't recovered yet. You can take the carriage back and recuperate on the way back." "All right then. You must be careful." Hearing Fengjiu's words, he could only leave first. After all, he couldn't afford to offend the people in this clinic. Even if he stayed, he wouldn't be of much help. "Go. You don't have to worry about those people. They've already told you. They won't trouble you again." "All right, then I'll go." After thanking him, he sat in the carriage and looked at the young man standing in front of the clinic. His eyes were fixed on his face, trying to remember his face in his mind. Even if he couldn't see him again in the future, he wouldn't forget. "Little brother, are you relieved now?" the old doctor said with a smile. Come, let's go in. I want to discuss with you the method you used to stitch up the wound." Thus, Fengjiu followed him in. After being pulled by the doctor for 2 hours, she said, "I'm going back to rest. I'll go over again tonight." All right. Have a good rest," the old doctor said as he watched Fengjiu go back. Then he took a book and recorded the useful things that Fingzhou said. Back in the room, Fingzhou went to bed and had a good sleep. She didn't get up until evening and asked someone to prepare dinner. After eating, she saw that the sky wasn't dark yet. She walked around and then went to the courtyard next door. As soon as she entered, she felt several eyes on her. She didn't care and went inside. She saw the old man in gray and the old doctor guarding the bed. "Ha ha ha, little brother, you're here." The old doctor came forward with a smile and said, "Young master is a little feverish, but after I fed him some medicine according to your instructions, the fever subsided. Even the red and swollen areas around the wound subsided a little." "All right, let me take a look." She nodded and went forward to check his pulse. "Yes, the poison has been cured. His pulse is stable." "Yes. Little brother, your medicinal liquid is truly a divine liquid. I have never seen such a special effect." The old doctor's eyes lit up as he spoke. He asked, "Little brother, do you have any more of this? Good things are always rare. Moreover, your young master doesn't need to stay here. His life is no longer in danger. Ordinary medicine will do." She smiled and said, "Since there's nothing else, I'll go back first." "That won't do." The gray-robed elder said, "Didn't you say that tonight is a dangerous night?" Fengjiu was about to say something when the old man in gray took out a long box and handed it to her. "This is your reward." Seeing this, she opened it and saw that it was full of caterpillar fungus. She couldn't help but raise her eyebrows. "You're really giving it to me?" The quality was really not ordinary. He took it out so casually. He was really not an ordinary person. Chapter 1372. "All right then. Thank you." She kept her things and found a place to sit down. "Let me stand guard here, you guys can leave. Also, staying up late is very tiring. Get someone to cook something nourishing and refreshing for me to eat." Hearing this, the two of them looked at each other and nodded. "All right then. We'll leave this place to you, we'll stand guard outside." There were still people watching from the shadows. They weren't afraid that he would act rashly. Furthermore, he wouldn't gain anything from acting rashly against their young master. He shouldn't be that stupid. Seeing that they had left and that the people in the shadows were still watching, Fengzhou didn't bother about them. The person lying here was their young master. They naturally couldn't withdraw all the people in the shadows. However, if she wanted to leave, she wasn't in a hurry. Tonight wasn't the best time to leave. Hence, she walked around the room. Seeing that there wasn't a soft bed, she got someone to bring a soft bed over, then sat on the soft bed and flipped through a book until supper was sent over. Then, she checked the person lying on the bed again. Seeing that the mask was still on, she didn't think of taking it off to see what was going on. After all, knowing too much wouldn't do her any good. That night, as she expected, after taking her medicine, the person lying on the bed didn't have a fever and the night passed peacefully. Only at daybreak did she return to her room to rest, and once she entered her room, she didn't go out for the whole day. In the room next to the courtyard, the old doctor checked the wound in the evening, then nodded and smiled at the gray-robed old man. "The young master's wound is recovering well, the critical period has passed, we just have to wait for him to wake up." "That's good." The gray-robed old man was relieved and said, "That kid has some ability, such a person, if we can recruit him to be one of our people." The old doctor interrupted him and said, "You don't have to think about it. That little brother doesn't look like someone who is bound by rules. Furthermore, with his skills, it's obvious that he's extraordinary. He's definitely not a nobody." Seeing this, the gray-robed old man didn't say anything, only stroking his beard and said, "He went back to rest this morning and hasn't come out since. Although the young master's wound is gradually recovering, we can't be careless, in case the wound gets infected again. It's getting late, get someone to call him over to take care of him." "All right." As the old doctor spoke, he planned to call him personally. Who knew that when he turned around, he would see the yawning youth walk in with a sleepy face. Hee, little brother, you're here. Senior, what medicinal cuisine did you prepare for me today? Fengjiu patted his cheeks and asked expectantly after recovering some of his energy. Hearing those words, the old physician shook his head and chuckled. Wait a moment, I'll get someone to bring it over. In just 2 days, he knew that this young man loved to eat, especially delicacies. By the way, I'll return this medicinal cuisine book to you. I've finished reading it. Fengjiu handed the book back to him. Seeing this, the old man accepted it and sat down with him. As for the other person, he entered the room. Not long after the two had finished their dinner, Fengjiu entered the room again, and the others left again. No one paid much attention to it until the next morning. When they knocked on the door and entered, they found that the young man was not in the room. The two old men were startled and exchanged glances. Then, the gray-robed old man asked, "Where's that young man?" Chapter 1373. That's right, where's that young man? I think he went out in the middle of the night, and then he didn't come back. A voice came from the dark, intermittent and somewhat guilty. What? The two old men were startled, and the old man in gray was furious. He went out in the middle of the night and didn't come back, and none of you went to check on him? The people in the dark were silent. They thought that he couldn't escape, so they only guarded the young master, thinking that it was fine as long as the young master was fine. Who would have thought that the young man would run away in the middle of the night? What are you waiting for? Why aren't you calling people to chase after him? The young master's stitches haven't been removed. What if an accident happens? The old man in gray shouted. Just as the people in the dark responded, the old doctor sighed. Forget it. It's impossible to chase after him now. He can escape under the eyes of so many people. How can he be caught so easily? Thinking about it, that young man already had the intention to escape, or else why would he let them make the arrangements to send his friends away first? But the young master. The young master's life is no longer in danger. We just have to wait for him to wake up and his wounds to recover, then we can remove the stitches. The old doctor stroked his beard and said. All right then. The old man in gray flicked his sleeves and walked out. The old doctor followed him out, but just as he was about to step out, he suddenly heard a cough behind him. He couldn't help but be startled and quickly turned back. Young master. The young master is awake. He went forward to check on him in surprise. Even the old man in gray who heard the sound outside quickly walked back. The man on the bed opened his eyes and looked at the two of them, indicating that he wanted to get up. Seeing this, the two hurriedly stopped him. Young master, your wounds haven't healed, you shouldn't sit up. Report. An anxious voice came from outside. When the old man in gray heard this, he said to the old doctor, help take a look at the young master, I'll be back soon. As he spoke, he bowed to the man on the bed and retreated. The man on the bed gently touched his wound, feeling that it was slightly warm, but it was not like before. Under the mask, the corners of his mouth twitched and his voice was hoarse and weak. As expected, I won't die. Who was it that saved me? Hearing this, the old doctor was slightly surprised, but he still reported, young lord is wise. The one who held the knife and treated young lord was a young man, but he sneaked away in the middle of the night yesterday. I'm ashamed that I couldn't let young lord see him. Hearing this, the man on the bed paused. He seemed to have thought of something and did not speak again. At this moment, outside. What are all of you doing? You actually allowed him to do such a thing without anyone knowing. The gray-robed old man shouted angrily, unable to hide the anger in his eyes. Get out of here. The old doctor walked out and said, the young master has asked you to go in. Hearing this, the gray-robed elder suppressed his anger and walked in. When he arrived inside, he heard the young master's question. What happened? The gray-robed elder paused for a moment before replying, it's the young master who saved the young master. When he escaped in the middle of the night, he took quite a number of things with him. No one in the courtyard knew about it last night and only discovered it this morning. The old doctor was also stunned when he heard this. Take away a lot of things. That young man. Wasn't that a little too daring? It's just a few things, what's there to be surprised about? The man on the bed closed his eyes and said, let's forget about this matter. When the two heard this, they looked at each other and could only respectfully reply, yes. Chapter 1374. Fingzhou, who had left overnight, was resting under a tree. At least this mountain path was safe. After flying for so long on Flying Feather, the people behind her could not possibly catch up with her. She took out some water from her space and drank it. After catching her breath, she looked around. Seeing that this place was quiet and secluded with no one walking around, she leaped onto a big tree with lush leaves to rest. She wanted to rest for a while and recover her energy before continuing on her journey. There were almost no pedestrians on the quiet mountain path. Occasionally, she could only hear the sound of leaves rustling in the wind. Amidst the green leaves, a figure was leisurely resting among the branches with her eyes closed. It was as if she had become one with the trees, and no one could sense her presence. Until evening, she woke up from the tree and continued on her journey on Flying Feather under the cover of the sky. A few days later, outside Danyang City. Fingzhou, who was dressed in shabby beggar clothes, yawned as she entered the city and headed inside. She had finally arrived here after much difficulty. She had spent a lot of time walking and stopping along the way. Counting the days, she rested at Lenghua's place in the city for a day before setting off for Danyang sect. There were a lot of people in Danyang City, so the streets were crowded. She didn't know who bumped into her, but she bumped into a person in front of her. When that person turned around and saw her dressed as a beggar, he cursed loudly. Where did this beggar come from? Get lost. As he spoke, he lifted his leg and gave her a fierce kick. Fingzhou stepped to the side to avoid it. His kick landed on someone behind her. Damn it! You dare to kick me! Are you looking for death? Unexpectedly, the one who was kicked was a burly man. After being kicked for no reason, he rolled up his sleeves and punched the man in front of him. Bang! Hiss! You big guy! How dare you hit me? Do you know who I am? The man sucked in a cold breath. He covered his eyes and cursed angrily. Then, he pounced forward again. The surrounding people scattered. In order to avoid unnecessary trouble, they all moved to the side. In the crowd, Fingzhou's mouth twitched when she saw this scene. Taking advantage of the chaos, she hurriedly left. When she arrived at a courtyard, she looked left and right. Seeing that no one was looking, she jumped in. Roar! Master! Red Tiger, who was lying in the courtyard, immediately leaped forward and pounced into Fingzhou's arms. Master, Master, you're back! Lao Bai also excitedly shook his ponytail and went forward, but he was too big to pounce on Fingzhou. He could only intimately rub his face against hers. Master! Little Black ran over as well. The three beasts gathered around her, looking very happy. I'm back, Fingzhou said with a smile. Then, Lenghua walked out. Master! Lenghua stepped forward and bowed. How's everything at home? She asked. Everything is fine. My older sister and the others are looking after the shop, they haven't come back yet, Lenghua said. Seeing her dirty and messy clothes, he said, Mistress, I'll prepare some water for you to take a bath first. I'll go to the store with you later. Okay. She nodded and walked inside. 2 hours later, Fengzhou, Lenghua, and Red Tiger arrived at one of their shops in the city. When they saw that there were many people outside, pointing and discussing, they couldn't help but look at each other. Excuse me. Chapter 1375. Speak. How do you want to compensate us? He died after eating your medicine. Tell me, how do you want to compensate us? If you don't give us an explanation today, we'll smash your shop. That's right. Give us an explanation. Hearing the voices inside, Fengjiu looked inside and saw Du Fan and Leng Shuang inside. In front of them was a lifeless person on a stretcher. However, Du Fan and Leng Shuang were both smiling and expressionless. They formed a stark contrast to the 7 or 8 people who were glaring angrily inside the shop. The sharp-eyed Du Fan saw Fengjiu and Leng Shuang standing outside the shop. His eyes lit up. As he walked out quickly, he inadvertently stepped on the finger of the person on the stretcher. The finger that was hanging outside moved slightly. Noticing this, Fengjiu smiled and walked in. What's going on? Is this person dead? Yes, they said that the person died after taking the medicine in our shop. Is that so? She asked casually. It might be, so I'm thinking of taking care of it. Du Fan said with a smile. Oh. How do you plan to take care of it? Fengjiu asked cooperatively. Meanwhile, Du Fan turned to look at the robust men at the side and said, I'm really sorry. Since all of you died from eating the medicine in our store, then we can compensate all of you. What do all of you think? Hearing this, the 7 or 8 people were delighted. They looked at each other and said with a straight face, that's more like it. However, before that, I want to verify if he really died after eating our medicine. So, I plan to cut open the corpse's abdomen to check. When these words were spoken, the 7 or 8 people were all dumbfounded. Even the lifeless corpse lying on the ground seemed to stiffen for a moment. What? Cut open his abdomen. One of them stuttered. That's right. Even if I want to lose money, I have to look at the reason, right? As long as you nod your head, I'll immediately send someone to compensate you with 100,000 gold coins. As for this corpse, don't worry, we'll help you bury it. Du Fan had a serious look on his face, as if this was a good suggestion. However, when those people heard these words, they were hesitant and tempted. 100,000 gold coins. How long would they have to earn that much money? However, to cut open her stomach, this. When the onlookers heard this, they said, that's right. Since they're willing to fork out the money, they definitely have to investigate if the person really died because of their medicine. Since the person is already dead, what's the harm in letting them perform an autopsy? That's right. He's already dead. What's there to be afraid of? Shuang, go to the back and get a butcher's knife. The longer one. Du Fan said to Leng Shuang. Hearing these words, the person on the ground started to sweat. Especially after hearing Du Fan's words, he felt a chill run down his spine. Suddenly, he jumped up and ran out. I don't want it anymore, I don't want it anymore. If I keep pretending, I'll lose my life. Chapter 1376. So it was extortion. That's right. That person is clearly still alive. But when he was carried here, he really seemed to have stopped breathing. Something must have been done. That's true. The crowd dispersed as they discussed. Without any excitement to watch, it was quiet in front of the door. Only Fengjiu and a few others were left. Mistress, come in. Du Fan said as he invited her in. Leng Hua closed the door behind them and went to the back together. Mistress. The two of them bowed to her. That's enough. Fengjiu waved her hand and asked, did we run into any trouble here during this period? Hearing this, they looked at each other and smiled. Mistress, don't worry. Although we ran into some trouble, it's just a small problem. We can handle it. That's good. She nodded and said, it's our first time here. If we rely on ourselves, we can't casually make enemies with others. However, if there's really a problem that you can't solve and I'm not here, you can go to the black market to seek protection. Yes. The few of them answered and asked her if the trip was smooth. Did you run into any danger on the way? Fengjiu gave them a rough explanation and gave them some instructions. At the same time, she took out some medicinal liquid for them to sell in the shop. I'm going to Danyang Peak tomorrow. Every once in a while, I'll send some medicinal liquid for you to sell in the shop. In addition, the three of you have to work hard on your cultivation. Yes, we know. The three of them answered. They left only one bottle of medicinal liquid in the shop from Fengjiu's 10 bottles and handed the rest to Lang Hua for safekeeping. After sitting in the shop for a while, Fengjiu left. She brought Lang Hua and Qi Hu for a stroll in the city before returning to the courtyard to rest. The next morning, Fengjiu changed into green clothes and changed her appearance. Only then did she head to the boundary where Danyang Peak was located. Unlike other sects who recruited disciples, Danyang Peak only recruited disciples who had the talent to refine elixirs because they focused on refining elixirs. In addition, they were the #1 sect in the history of elixirs. Therefore, some of their alchemy apprentices were selected from various big clans. This 3-day disciple recruitment, to put it bluntly, was to recruit disciples who did odd jobs. However, she wanted to sneak in and find out about her mother's whereabouts first. As for the outer sect disciples and miscellaneous disciples, there was no difference to her. She didn't need them to teach her refining skills, and she didn't go in to learn how to refine pills. She just wanted to find her mother. She walked for a while and occasionally flew. Until evening, Fengjiu found a place to rest. She planned to go to Danyang tomorrow. Anyway, she had 3 days, so she was not in a hurry. She leaned against a tree and drank water and ate something. Then, she closed her eyes and rested. However, when she calmed down, she smelled a faint smell of blood in the air. She was startled when she smelled the blood. She opened her eyes and tiptoed to follow the smell of blood. She wanted to see why there was a smell of blood in this place. After all, ordinary people did not dare to kill people at the foot of Danyang Peak. Chapter 1377. Seeing the dozens of people wearing the Koryang sect's uniform rushing out, her eyes flickered. Just as she was about to say something, she heard one of them scolding, "How dare you? How dare you kill people in the territory of our Danyang sect?" Hearing this, Fengjiu raised his eyebrows. His gaze fell on the person who spoke and continued, "You misunderstood. I am a passerby who is on my way to the Danyang sect to participate in the entrance examination. I was resting in the forest when I smelled blood and came to take a look. There's only one person around here. If you didn't kill him, then who did it?" Hearing this, she glanced at that person with a strange expression. "You keep saying that I killed someone, but do you have any evidence?" "I've just walked out, and I haven't even gotten close to that person, so how can I kill him? Moreover, I have no enmity with him, so why would I kill him?" Other than the leader, the others couldn't help but size up Fengjiu after hearing his words. He saw that the young man was clean and dressed simply. His eyes were pure and innocent, and he didn't look like someone who would kill. "Senior brother Lin, maybe it wasn't this young man who killed them. Look at his clean green robes," and he even walked over from that direction. A man whispered. "Yes, of course, we have to find the murderer, but we can't wrong the innocent. It must be this young man who killed him. This is already the 6th person we've killed. Moreover, we've been patrolling this area and haven't seen anyone else. It's very suspicious for this person to suddenly appear here. If it's not him, then who could it be?" The man in the lead stared at Fengjiu with a gloomy gaze and shouted, "Kid, confess honestly. Are you the one who has been robbing and killing people in this forest recently?" Fengjiu secretly rolled his eyes. This person was simply an idiot. Even if it was her, she wouldn't be stupid enough to answer such a question. However, looking at his posture, it seemed that he was certain that it was her. She immediately walked up to him and said, "I only came here today. As I said earlier, I came here because I smelled blood when I was resting in the forest." She looked at the person who was hung up and said to the other two, "Senior brothers, can I trouble you to put him down first?" "Pfft, who's your senior brother? Don't call him that." As the two of them spoke, they still put him down. Fengjiu smiled and walked forward. Two of them blocked his path and asked, "What are you doing?" "Let me check your cause of death and time of death. You know how to perform an autopsy." The two men were surprised. "Yes, I have some experience." As she spoke, she took out a pair of gloves from her sleeves and put them on. As she unbuttoned her clothes, her expression changed slightly and she said, "This person died less than 2 hours ago. He fainted after inhaling the sleeping gas. After he fainted, he was hung upside down and his tongue was cut off. Then, his throat was slit and the tendons of his limbs were cut off. In addition, this person's manhood was also cut off. This kind of killing method was used to vent one's anger. She had been to many places, but this was the first time she encountered such a pervert. It was one thing to kill someone, but to torture them before they died, it could be seen that this person's twisted mind had reached a perverted level. This kind of person really had to be caught. Otherwise, there would definitely be more deaths next time. Chapter 1378. You said earlier that there were a few people who were killed. What about the time and place of their deaths? Are there any similarities between the people? Actually, you can start researching in this area. Maybe you can catch that pervert before he kills the next person. You have to come with us. The leader, Lin, stared at Fengjiu and said, "You said all this. Although you said that you just arrived here today and that the murderer can't be you, this is only your side of the story. Before we catch the murderer, you have to come with us." Hearing this, Fengjiu frowned, "But I still have to go to the Danyang sect's assessment. Who's going to be responsible if I miss the opportunity?" "Pfft." One of them sneered. He looked at Fengjiu and said with a smile, "The sect only recruits outer disciples who do odd jobs. Even if you go up, you may not be recruited. However, if we help you say a few words, you can directly enter the sect without any assessment. Which of the two do you think is more worthwhile?" Hearing this, Fengjiu's eyes flickered, but his face was full of disbelief. "Are you serious? You're not bluffing? What if I can't get in?" "Bluffing?" The male disciple raised his chin and said proudly, "You don't know who I am, do you? My master is the eldest disciple of the Three Sons Grandmaster. It only takes a single word from my master to let a random person enter the sect." "Is that so?" Her eyes lit up and she smiled. "All right, I'll go with you." The Three Sons Grandmaster was famous in the Danyang sect. Her mother was his direct disciple. She should be doing well in the sect, right? Since this man's master was the eldest disciple of the Three Sons Grandmaster, he should know some news about her mother. Then, thinking of this, she smiled and went forward to salute. "Senior brother, how should I address you?" "My surname is Luo and my name is Hang. You can call me Senior Brother Luo." He waved his hand and looked at her. "Yes, Senior Brother Luo. Please take care of me in the future." Then, she bowed to the others before following behind Luo Hang. Seeing this, the others didn't say anything. They just got someone to take care of the corpses. Then, they walked into the forest and patrolled the area. At the same time, they told Fengjiu about the deaths of the previous few people. So many people walked around in the forest, but they didn't find anything. Instead, they met some people from the alchemy sect courtyard, so they were warned to be careful. Then, everyone stopped. "How about this? Let's search in groups of 4. This way, we can search a larger area." If anything happens, just give us a shout. The man surnamed Lin, who was the leader, said as he divided everyone into small groups of 4. In the end, only Fingzhou and Luo Heng were left. They looked at each other and heard the voice of the man surnamed Lin. It just so happens that only the 2 of you are left. Since that's the case, the 2 of you can form your own team. You want me to team up with him? Luo Heng frowned and glanced at Fingzhou. You're only at the middle stage of the Foundation establishment realm. If you encounter any danger, won't you implicate me? Fingzhou grinned embarrassedly. It's okay. If we can't beat them, we can run. Chapter 1379. Alright. Let's go over there then. Luo Heng pointed in a direction and spoke to the others. Then, he and Fingzhou headed in the other direction. When they reached a place where no one was around, Fingzhou glanced at Luo Heng and asked, Senior brother Luo, I heard that Founder 3 Sons has taken in a female disciple, right? Have you seen that female disciple before? Oh. You know about this as well. Luo Heng glanced at Fingzhou and said, Our martial aunt isn't from the 8 great empires. Although she has some talent in pill refinement, in a sect like the Danyang sect, she's nothing special. Founder 3 Sons' last disciple, no matter what, her position in the sect shouldn't be low. Moreover, if she wasn't favored by Founder 3 Sons, he wouldn't have taken her in as his last disciple. She spoke again as she looked at Luo Heng. Pfft, you've asked me this question. If you asked anyone else, they'd definitely tell you that her position in the sect isn't low. After all, she's the last disciple of Founder 3 Sons. And she's the only female disciple. Founder 3 Sons must have treated her extremely well. Hearing this, Fingzhou's heart sank and asked, Isn't that the case? That seems to be the case. However, there was one time when I saw her standing in front of the pill wall and crying. Although she was beautiful, there was always a trace of worry between her brows. I thought that maybe the 3 Sons' ancestor didn't treat her well. However, I couldn't verify this because my martial aunt rarely walks around the sect. Fingzhou lowered his eyes and hid the look in his eyes. His heart was slightly clenched. Was her mother having a bad time in the Danyang sect? Perhaps she is homesick. Founder 3 Sons' last disciple is by her side. She should be able to go home occasionally to visit, right? I don't know about that. I just said that she doesn't usually walk around the sect. The only person in the sect who knows is that she's the last disciple of Founder 3 Sons. No one else knows. At this point, he suddenly came to his senses and asked, Why are you asking so much about my martial aunt? Do you know her? Fingzhou shook his head. No, I'm just curious. Seeing this, he kindly reminded him, What's there to be curious about? Even if you enter the sect, you'll only be a servant. Just do your job well. If you're too curious about other things, it won't be good for you. Yes, I know. Thank you for your reminder, Senior Brother Luo. She smiled as she gave her thanks. After walking around for a while, she didn't bump into anyone, so she smiled and said, Senior Brother Luo, I feel that the 2 of us are just like bait right now. Do you think that perverted killer has his eyes on us? Upon hearing this, Luo Heng's body stiffened and his face turned pale. He said nervously, You don't talk nonsense. What bait? It sounds scary. I'm not bait. If that perverted killer dares to appear, I'll definitely teach him a lesson. Yes, with Senior Brother Luo here, I feel more at ease. If we encounter any danger, Senior Brother Luo must remember to look after me. She said with a smile. Chapter 1380. Although he said that, when he looked around, there was still vigilance and a hint of fear in his eyes. After all, the killer's methods were too frightening. If it were anyone else, they would feel fear in their heart, worried that they would encounter the killer. Feng Zhou, on the other hand, was smiling as she walked beside him. Compared to Luo Heng, who was timid and vigilant, she seemed to be more composed. He was still analyzing the situation in his heart. The assassin had specifically targeted the people of the Danyang sect. Moreover, he had severed the man's limbs, slit the man's throat, and cut off the man's genitals. "Hey, are you going to the Danyang sect?" Luo Heng shouted. A burly man in front of them turned around and glanced at them. Seeing that Luo Heng was wearing the uniform of the Danyang sect, he stepped forward and bowed. "Yes, I'm going to the Danyang sect." "Are you two disciples of the Danyang sect?" "That's right. Let me tell you, this area is not very safe. Be careful when you go up the mountain. If you encounter any danger, call for help immediately," Luo Heng reminded him. The burly man was stunned for a moment, then smiled and said, "I'm not boasting, but I have no problem protecting myself. You two don't have to worry." Feng Zhou smiled and said, "It's better to be careful. 6 or 7 people have died in this area. They were all killed." Hearing that, the man was slightly surprised and nodded, "Thank you, I'll be more careful." Then, he cupped his hands and left, heading up the mountain. Seeing that the man had left, the two walked around the forest and found nothing. Luo Heng went to rest under a tree. "Let's rest for a while. We didn't find anything after walking around. Maybe the man has left." He sat under the tree and took a sip of water. Feng Zhou thought about it. According to what they said earlier, one person would die almost every 6 hours. Then, it had been almost 6 hours since the previous incident. If they really had to kill one person every 6 hours, then it should be around this time. However, it was not easy to find the killer in such a big place. Moreover, the killer used knockout powder. Even if he did, the victim would not be able to make a sound. However, just as he was thinking, a light flashed through his mind. "Senior brother Luo, you said that the people who were killed were all burly men in their 30s. Feng Zhou looked at Luo Heng and asked. "Yes. The people who died were all as strong as bulls, but they didn't even have the ability to protect themselves. They were really too weak," Luo Heng said and looked at him. "Why are you asking this?" Feng Zhou, who was sitting at the side, immediately stood up. "Of the 2 people we met just now, one of them seemed to be a burly man around 30 years old. If the murderer specifically targeted this type of people, would it be? Do you mean that they have their eyes on that person?" Luo Heng stood up nervously and said, "That seems to be a possibility. Why don't I go find senior brother Lin and the others first? Shall we go and take a look? If we find them, that person will probably be dead soon. Calculating the time, if it's really 6 hours, then that person has probably already made his move. Quick, let's chase after them and take a look." As she spoke, she ran in the direction of the man who had gone up the mountain. Chapter 1381. At the same time, just as Feng Zhou expected, about 200 meters ahead, the unconscious burly man they met before was being dragged into the forest. His body rubbed against the ground, making a rustling sound. That person seemed to be looking for a better place to attack as he dragged the unconscious man, muttering from time to time. "All of you deserve to die, all of you deserve to die. I will kill all of you, kill all of you." That person's hair was disheveled and his face could not be seen clearly. He was barefooted and wore a tattered Danyang sect robe. At this moment, he was dragging the unconscious man's leg with one hand and holding a sharp dagger with the other. When Luo Heng, who was quietly approaching, saw this scene, his whole body froze and he almost screamed. It was a pair of hands that covered his mouth, allowing him to suppress his cry of surprise. Heavens! There really was a homicidal maniac. And it was someone wearing their Danyang sect robe. Could it be that the perverted homicidal maniac was from their Danyang sect? When he thought of this possibility, his body began to tremble, and he was shocked beyond belief. Senior Brother Luo. Senior Brother Luo. Fengjiu called out in a low voice, staring straight ahead. That person looked to be less than 30 years old. His body was thin and slender, and his face could not be seen clearly. His cultivation was at the peak of the golden core stage. With such strength, he could kill the people in front without alerting anyone. It could be imagined that this person also knew medicine. He used medicine to deal with those people, so he was able to kill without alerting anyone. Just like now, that burly man was being dragged like this. She was sure that if the two of them did not appear, it would not be long before that man would die without a doubt. Senior Brother Luo, catch him. Fengjiu said in a low voice. Hearing this, Luo Heng's face turned pale and he stared at him with wide eyes. After removing Fengjiu's hand, he lowered his voice and said angrily, You want to push me to my death? That person's methods were so cruel. Not only did he cut off my tongue, he also cut off my limbs. Most importantly, he even cut off my manhood. I don't want to die so miserably. How can that be? That person is also a golden core cultivator. You are also a golden core cultivator. You can definitely beat him. Think about it. Saving that person and capturing that killer demon is a great merit. The sect will definitely reward you. Moreover, it's not too late to find Senior Brother Lin and the others. Could it be that you're just going to watch the man who greeted us earlier be brutally killed right in front of you? But I don't have the guts. Senior Brother Luo Heng of the Danyang sect is here. Surrender now. Fengjiu suddenly shouted and pulled Luo Heng to the front. Seeing this, his face paled a little, especially when the perverted killer who was dragging the unconscious man stopped and turned around to look at the two of them. That sinister and somewhat crazy gaze made him involuntarily shudder. You're trying to kill me, he said with a long face, his legs trembling. When he saw that person release the man and walk towards them, he was so scared that he could not even run. Quick, pull me away. My legs are weak. Chapter 1382. Luo Heng's face paled and he screamed, not forward, back. He didn't want to die. As an early golden core cultivator, he was no match for a peak golden core cultivator. If he overestimated himself and went forward, he would only end up dead. Go to hell. The man with disheveled hair in front of him stabbed with a knife, and at the same time, he sprinkled a handful of medicinal powder in his hand. At that moment, Luo Heng screamed. He felt his vision blur, as if he had kicked something, and his whole body fell forward. At the same time, Fengjiu shot out a silver needle. When the man sprinkled the medicinal powder, he didn't expect to be hit by this move. He groaned, and his sinister and crazy eyes instantly looked towards Fengjiu. Ah! Luo Heng, who was rushing forward, was suddenly pulled back by a force, avoiding the medicinal powder in front of him. He didn't know what happened, but his whole body fell directly on top of the man. Ah! Fengjiu also took the opportunity to roll down, and after falling to the ground, he cried out in alarm. At this moment, Luo Heng realized that the man under him seemed to be motionless. He couldn't help but be startled. When he got up, he saw that the man's forehead had hit a sharp stone on the ground, and his head was bleeding. He had lost consciousness. Hiss! It's him. He hurriedly took a few steps back, and looked at the man's face in astonishment. Fengjiu rubbed his aching limbs and stood up, and said, Senior Brother Luo, you're really amazing. You caught that man in one move, but shouldn't you tie him up first? Ah! Did I catch him? He asked blankly. Didn't you? She blinked, her face full of confusion. Yes, he was knocked to the ground by me, that's why he hit the stone and fainted. I caught him. I made the first contribution. He suddenly felt proud, but when he thought of that man, he squatted down again and lifted his hair to take a look. Then, he frowned and took out a rope to tie the unconscious man up. At the side, Fengjiu discreetly took out his silver needles and kept them in his sleeves. Seeing his expression, he asked, "Senior brother Luo knows him?" "Yes, this man is from the Danyang sect, but he has been missing for several months." "How did he end up like this? Why are you still killing people here?" he said doubtfully as he stared at the person he had tied up. He couldn't understand. "Senior Marshal Brother Luo, look, his hands and feet seem to have been tied up." Fengjiu pointed at the man's hands and feet as he asked, "Who was this man originally from the Danyang sect?" "A cultivator at the pinnacle of the Golden Core realm who also knows medicine. He shouldn't be an ordinary disciple, right? He's one of Patriarch Su Wuzi's people. I've seen him a few times, but then I heard." With that, he hesitated for a moment. Then he thought about how Meng Hao had killed people, and couldn't help but feel shocked. "Heard what?" Fengjiu asked curiously. Luo Heng was also a person who couldn't keep his mouth shut. In addition, he had doubts in his heart and wanted to find someone to talk to, so he whispered, "If I tell you, you can't tell anyone." "Yes, yes." She hurriedly nodded, "Don't worry, I'll forget what I heard." Chapter 1383. Hearing this, Fengjiu's eyes flashed with surprise. It can't be, right? Thinking of this person's strange torture methods, she could not help but have goosebumps all over her body. Everyone would stir up trouble. Moreover, this perverted murderer's mind was so twisted that it might really be possible. "No matter what, we have to capture this person and interrogate him properly," Luo Heng said as he looked at the unconscious person. "I'll go find Senior Brother Lin and tell them that we've captured the person." Then just as he was speaking, he saw the person on the ground suddenly jump up and hit him fiercely. He was caught off guard and knocked down. "Ah!" He cried out in alarm and fell to the ground. Before he could regain his senses, he saw the person who was tied up suddenly exert force, and the aura of spiritual power on his body burst out. Bang! With a loud sound, the thick hemp rope broke. Once the hemp rope was broken, he took out a dagger from somewhere and stabbed it at Luo Heng in front of him, causing Luo Heng to scream in fear. "Ah!" At the same time, he instinctively dodged and rolled to Fengjiu's side. Fengjiu also recovered at this time. Seeing the person waving the dagger at her, she immediately tried to stop him and restrain him. However, once they exchanged blows, she found that his strength was unusually strong. The explosive power of his body was in contrast to his thin physique. Swoosh! The sharp blade sliced through the air, bringing with it a sharp gust of wind. The tip of the blade sliced through her sleeve, tearing a hole. She quickly retreated, only to see a pair of crazy eyes staring at her, filled with hatred and bloodthirsty killing intent. It was as if he had made up his mind to kill her. He didn't even care about Luo Heng, who had fallen to the ground, and only wanted to kill her. She had ruined his plans. If he did not kill her, who would he kill? However, even though he had experienced some unbearable things, the bystanders were all innocent. He had vented his anger on others, so he no longer had the right to be pitied. "Senior Brother Luo, come and help me." Fengjiu retreated step by step. She had suppressed her strength to the level of Foundation establishment because she did not want to provoke anyone. Naturally, it would be difficult for her to protect herself with her Foundation establishment strength in the face of a murderous maniac at the peak of the Golden Elixir realm. Thus, she asked Luo Heng for help. Oh. Wait here, I'll find someone to save you." Luo Heng's face was pale and his legs were trembling. How could he think of saving Fengjiu? He scrambled to his feet, holding onto a tree branch as he tried to escape to call for reinforcements. How could he imagine what would happen to Fengjiu, who was only in the Foundation establishment stage, if he left just like that. The corners of Feng Jiu's mouth twitched when she heard his words. In any case, this coward is still a golden core cultivator, yet he actually only wants to flee and not fight. Exactly which clan taught him such courage? Thus, she rolled her eyes and ran in the direction of Luo Heng, shouting, "Senior brother Luo. Ah, don't chase me. Senior brother Luo, save me." Unexpectedly, Luo Heng's face turned pale and he hurriedly waved his hands to chase her away. Don't come to me. Run over there, run over there. Chapter 1384. Whoosh! Clang! A sharp voice rang out. Sparks flew as the sword and saber clashed. The aura of a golden core cultivator surged between the two of them. However, Luo Heng was pushed several meters away by the man with disheveled hair after one strike. Ah! He staggered backwards, and just as he was about to fall, he was supported from behind. Startled, he turned his head and saw the youth supporting him and pushing him forward. With an encouraging expression, the youth said, "Senior brother Luo, I believe you can definitely beat him." Again. Ah! Luo Heng exclaimed and was pushed forward again. Using the momentum from the push, he waved the sword in his hand and rushed forward again. Let's fight. Whoosh! Bang, bang, bang. A sharp sword aura shot out from his sword and swept out with his slanted sword. The man leaped and dodged. The sword aura swept through the air and landed among the trees behind him, cutting down a few of them. Bang, bang. As the tree fell, the man with disheveled hair dodged Luo Heng's attack. His bloodthirsty eyes were filled with killing intent as he stared at Feng Nine. "I'm going to kill you. Kill you." Seeing this, Feng Jiu's fingers moved slightly, and several silver needles were sandwiched between her fingers, shining with cold light. She did not go forward but shouted to Luo Heng, "Senior brother Luo, go, go. Capture him before senior brother Lin and the rest arrive. You'll get the first merit." Hearing this, Luo Heng's heart skipped a beat. Yes. This was the first merit. Now that they were fighting, the aura and pressure were surging. It would not be long before senior brother Lin and the rest arrive. If they arrived, how could he get the first merit? Thinking of this, he used all his strength to rush forward. He originally wanted to catch him alive, but he could not care less now. Thus, as he flew forward, he opened his other hand and threw out a large silver net. Bind! The large net came down from above, trapping the man who had rushed forward. In the next moment, it quickly tightened and tightly bound the man inside. Piercing light sword shadow. With a loud shout, a cold light flashed past. The sharp sword chi transformed into several rays of light that shot towards the man trapped in the silver net. Swish! Swish! Hiss! Ah! He sucked in a breath of cold air. His figure was knocked to the ground, and he screamed in pain and anger. He tore at the silver net. His hands were cut by the silver net because of the force he used to pull, and blood seeped out. Ah! The voice that contained a powerful pressure exploded with a sharp airflow. In an instant, a ray of light shot out from the man with disheveled hair. He tore with both hands, and the silver net fell to the ground with a bang. His entire body was drenched in blood. His gaze was sinister as he charged forward and viciously punched Luo Heng, who was scared silly. Ah! No! A cry of alarm rang out. The panic and fear in the voice made the hearts of the people who had rushed over after hearing the commotion. They quickly quickened their pace. When the leader, surnamed Lin, heard the voice, he immediately glanced at the people who were converging on him. When he saw that Luo Heng and the other two were not here, his expression changed and he immediately said, "Hurry up. Junior brother Luo Heng must have encountered that murderous demon." Chapter 1385. When he thought of this, he broke into a run and was a few meters ahead of the people behind him. When he arrived at the scene, he could not help but be dumbfounded. The faint smell of blood filled the air in the forest. A young man in green and Luo Heng had fallen to the ground and were staring blankly in front of them. They were clearly frightened. In front of the two of them, a man with disheveled hair was lying on the ground less than a meter away. His eyes were wide open, and there was a dagger stuck in his dantian. The entire dagger had sunk into his body, and only the handle of the dagger was visible. His body was stiff as he lay there, dead, but his eyes were still staring straight ahead. When he saw this, the man surnamed Lin hurriedly stepped forward to check on him. After confirming that the man was dead, he looked at Luo Heng with a complicated expression. "Junior brother Luo, are you all right? Senior brother Luo, is he the homicidal maniac? Senior brother Luo, you actually killed him. Senior brother Luo is so skillful. Senior brother Luo has made a great contribution." One by one, voices filled with envy could be heard. Someone stepped forward and recognized the dead man's face. He could not help but exclaim in surprise, "It's him." "Him? Who?" The person next to him asked curiously and also looked at the dead man. "He's a disciple from ancestor Su Wuzi's mountain. I've seen him a few times, but recently I heard that he had gone missing for several months. How could he be here? And become a ruthless homicidal maniac?" However, he did not ask this question. This matter was related to ancestor Su Wuzi of the sect, so they naturally could not discuss it. Luo Heng stared blankly at the dead man in front of him. His eyes were still staring in this direction. That malicious and bloodthirsty gaze made his heart tremble. When he thought of what had just happened, a trace of confusion flashed across his eyes. How did that man die? At that time, he had seen that punch carrying a fatal and powerful air current. It had shocked him so much that he had hugged his head and cried out in alarm. Therefore, he had not seen how he had died. When he did not feel any movement for a long time, he cautiously raised his head and saw that the man had already died in front of him. He wasn't the one who stabbed the man's dantian with the dagger. However, in this place, other than him, there was only the green-robed youth beside him and the unconscious burly man on the ground. However, that person was unconscious and could not make a move. Then, was it the green-robed youth beside him? Thinking of this, he turned his head in a daze and stared blankly at the youth who was as pale and scared as him. Did he kill them? He looked even more scared than him. How could he have killed him? But if it wasn't him, then who was it? He clearly didn't do anything. "Luo, senior brother Luo, it's fortunate that you're here. Otherwise, we'd be doomed." It took Fengjiu a while to regain his senses. With a pale face, he patted his chest and exhaled softly, looking as if he had just survived a disaster. "This." Just as he was about to ask, he heard the green-robed youth hold his hand and say, "Senior brother Luo, thank you for saving me, you've done a great service." Hearing this, his entire body quivered. That's right. That homicidal maniac was dead, and he had made a great contribution. Chapter 1386. That's right, I made the first contribution. His eyes were bright and his face was full of excitement. The fear and panic from before had long disappeared. "You don't know this, but we followed this psychopathic murderer here and saw him about to attack that burly man." "That's right, that man is still over there. He's unconscious and must have been drugged. You should wake him up first," Luo Heng said proudly as he pointed at the burly man lying on the ground not far away. He continued, "Let me tell you, this psychopathic murderer is at the peak of the golden elixir realm. I spent a lot of effort to kill him. The process was extremely dangerous. During the fight, I was almost killed by him several times. Fortunately, I reacted quickly. Fengjiu was pushed to the back by the crowd. When she saw the disciples of the Danyang sect surrounding Luo Heng and asking questions, she could not help but smile. That man was really killed by junior brother Luo. Hearing the voice beside her, Fengjiu turned her head slightly and saw that the man surnamed Lin was staring at her. She nodded, yes. Fortunately, senior brother Luo was here. Otherwise, that murderer would definitely have escaped. Hearing this, the man surnamed Lin frowned slightly and seemed to be a little suspicious. However, there was no one else here. The young man in front of him was only at the foundation establishment stage. If it was not Luo Heng, who else could it be? Let's go back to the sect. Oh right, you. Luo Heng looked around and his eyes fell on Fengjiu with joy. You haven't told us your name yet. Fengjiu heard this and grinned, raising her voice, I'm Fengjiu. Fengjiu. Come, Fengjiu, I'll take you up the mountain. It's only a matter of a word for you to be a handyman. Let's go. Luo Heng walked towards Fengjiu and said confidently. Obviously, he had taken responsibility for this matter. As a result, Fengjiu followed him up the mountain. The people behind him looked at each other and carried the corpse back, intending to hand it over to the sect to investigate the matter of this sect disciple becoming a homicidal maniac. With Luo Heng's protection, Fengjiu naturally entered the Danyang sect and became a handyman on the Sanyang Peak. This is where you will be staying. Remember what I told you, odd job workers are not allowed to walk around. This 3-yang peak is divided into 9 levels. Ancestral Master 3-yang lives on the 9th level. Without his permission, even my master is not allowed to go up. As for the 8th level, it is where a few of Ancestral Master 3-yang's disciples live. I just told you that you are not allowed to go up there. As an odd job worker, you can move around from the 1st to the 3rd floor, but you can't move from the 4th floor onwards. Also, someone will come to guide you tomorrow and tell you what to do. Your odd job worker uniform and waist tag are all here. Take them. Fengjiu watched as Luo Heng handed the items to her and turned to leave. She looked at the items in her hand and then turned to walk into a simple and crude cave residence. Although it was called a cave residence, there was nothing inside. It was just an empty cave with a stone bed and a stone table. There wasn't even a place to take a bath. She had no choice but to make do with it. She took out the items from her space and laid them on the stone bed. Then, she lay down on the bed and rested her head with her hands behind her head. She thought that since she had come to Ancestor 3-yang's mountain, she would be able to see her mother sooner or later. Chapter 1387. That's right, so many years have passed, how could she possibly recognize me? Moreover, she had altered her appearance slightly, so only a small portion of her original appearance could be seen between her brows. Furthermore, she probably would never have thought that she would come here, to the Danyang sect to look for her. However, it didn't matter, I'll just stay here for now, I'll have a chance to see her sooner or later. The next day, before the sun had even risen, she was woken up. Following the instructions from the message slip, she arrived at the management office of the 3rd peak. When she arrived, there were already 2 odd job workers wearing the same green robes as her standing there. Good morning, Manager Qian. She smiled as she greeted him. Manager Qian glanced at her and replied indifferently, stand there. Yes. She stood beside the 2 odd job workers, and not long after, about 10 more people arrived one after another. When everyone had arrived, Manager Qian began to talk a lot, explaining things and what to pay attention to. Alright, the rest of you can go back to your work. The new one yesterday, called Feng something. Manager Qian pointed at Fengjiu and said. Fengjiu. She took a step forward and said. Yes, Fengjiu, come with me, I'll tell you what you'll be doing from now on. Manager Qian turned around and walked forward with his hands behind his back. Seeing this, Fengjiu followed him. New odd job workers have to start from the lowest level. You were introduced by Luo Heng, and he also asked me to take care of you, so I'll arrange an easier job for you. Hearing the words coming from the front, Fengjiu smiled and said, "Thank you for your care, Manager Qian." At Three Yang Peak, the back of the mountain is filled with herb fields, and there are specialized odd job workers taking care of it. From the fourth peak onwards, it's the place where the disciples of founder Three Yang's disciples live and refine their herbs. At Three Yang Peak, the spiritual herbs are stored at the seventh peak, and there are specialized people taking care of it. Hearing this, Fengjiu's eyes lit up. Could it be that he wanted her to deliver the spiritual herbs? However, the words that followed told her that she was thinking too much. Do you see that? That's the herb field. That field is planted with the commonly used red-tongue spirit leaf grass. The red-tongue spirit leaf grass is naturally fragrant and can easily attract snakes and birds to eat it. What you need to do is to guard here and prevent snakes and birds from stealing the red-tongue spirit leaf grass. Hearing this, Fengjiu was stunned and asked, "There are snakes and birds on this mountain?" Manager Qian glanced at Fengjiu and said, "Just do what I told you to do. Don't talk too much. When you meet them, just chase the snakes away as I told you." Seeing this, Fengjiu could only nod. "Yes, I understand. You're the only one guarding this area. Pay more attention. If there's anything, look for me at the management office." After saying this, he flicked his sleeves and was about to turn and leave when he saw a figure walking towards him. When he saw that figure, Manager Qian, who was still putting on airs, suddenly had a 360-degree change in attitude. With a face full of wrinkles from smiling, he bent his waist and went forward to greet him. "Senior Brother Qin, why are you here personally? Is there anything that I can do?" "Senior Brother Qin, please tell me." Chapter 1388. Strange. That strange feeling was like a child pretending to be an adult and putting on a fake beard. It was neither fish nor fowl. "Who are you, brat? Why do you keep staring at me?" That person's eyes widened as he stared at Fengjiu and asked. Seeing this, Manager Qian hurriedly laughed and said, "Hee, Senior Marshal Brother Qin, he's a new odd job worker. He just came up the mountain and is still in a daze. Don't lower yourself to his level." "Greetings, Senior Marshal Brother Qin. I just arrived." She stepped forward and bowed with a smile on her face. "A newly arrived odd job worker knows about me. It seems like my reputation in Three Yang Peak is so great that everyone knows about me." He suddenly had a proud look on his face. With one hand behind his back, he used the other to stroke his eye-catching handlebar mustache. Hearing this, Fengjiu was startled and stared at him again. Why did she feel that this person's behavior was strange? Manager Qian had already called him Senior Marshal Brother Qin, and she had only followed suit. He actually had a proud look on his face as if he was about to become famous. However, seeing this, she still smiled and said, "Senior Marshal Brother Qin is handsome and has an extraordinary bearing. Although I just entered the mountain yesterday, I haven't seen many people with Senior Marshal Brother Qin's celestial bearing." Manager Qian was a little dumbfounded when he heard this. The corner of his mouth twitched slightly as he looked at Fengjiu with a strange expression. It was obvious that he didn't expect him to brag without a draft. Senior Marshal Brother Chen's eyes lit up when he heard this. His hand that was stroking his handlebar mustache paused slightly. He looked at Fengjiu and nodded with satisfaction. "Not bad, you have a bright future." Hearing these words makes me burst with joy. Although the disciples of Three Yang Peak all know that I'm handsome and have an extraordinary bearing, very few people praise me in front of my face like you. Even Fengjiu's mouth twitched when he heard this. He was indeed an idiot. She composed herself and said with a serious face, "That's because everyone respects Senior Brother Qin in their hearts. Senior Brother Qin not only has the appearance of an immortal, but also has an extraordinary temperament. Before I even got close, I could smell the medicinal fragrance. It's obvious that Senior Brother Chen's attainments in the Tao of alchemy are few and far between. For a little servant disciple like me to be able to see such an extraordinary genius like Senior Brother Chen, it's really a blessing that I've cultivated for 3 lifetimes. When he heard Fingzhou's casual words, Manager Qian was dumbstruck. He actually didn't know that this kid had such skill in flattery. This was the first time he met Senior Brother Chen, right? Those who didn't know would think that he already knew her. Compared to Manager Qian's dumbfounded expression, Senior Brother Chen's entire body felt light and comfortable. His mood improved and he asked, "What's your name, little servant?" "Senior Brother Chen, my name is Fingzhou." She smiled and narrowed her eyes. Fingzhou. I'll remember it." He nodded and looked at Fingzhou with satisfaction. "You're not bad at all. I'll reward you with these spirit concentration pills." As he spoke, he flicked his sleeve and a bottle of pills flew out and landed in Fingzhou's hands. Manager Qian looked on enviously from the side. He just moved his mouth and said some flattering words, and a bottle of spirit concentration pills was in his hands. Fengzhou was slightly surprised, but he still expressed his gratitude with a face full of joy and excitement. "Thank you, Senior Brother Chen." Senior Brother Chen clasped his hands behind his back and raised his chin slightly. He had the appearance of an expert as he waved his hand. "All right, get to work." Chapter 1389. Seeing that Senior Marshal Brother Chen had left, Manager Qian was about to lecture Fingzhou with a darkened face when he saw him stride forward and hand over the spirit concentration pill. "Manager Qian, it's my first time here and it's all thanks to Manager Qian's care. This spirit concentration pill was a gift from Senior Marshal Brother Chen, so I'll gift it to Manager Qian. Please accept my kind intentions." Hearing this, Manager Qian was startled. He glanced at Fengzhou and saw that his face was sincere without any sign of reluctance. Only then did he nod his head in satisfaction. He was very pleased in his heart, but he still pretended to decline. "This is a gift from Senior Marshal Brother Chen, so you should keep it for yourself. After all, this is a spirit concentration pill, and it's not cheap to buy." Hearing this, Fingzhou said with a serious expression and admiration, "I know that Manager Qian is an upright and plain-spoken person, cold on the outside but warm on the inside. I've just entered the mountain, and Manager Qian has taken care of me in many ways and even arranged these leisurely matters for me. I'm very grateful for Manager Qian's kindness, but I don't have much to offer, so Manager Qian must accept this spirit concentration pill." As she spoke, she placed the pill in his hand. Seeing his embarrassed expression, she put on a serious expression and held back her laughter. Ahem. Manager Qian was elated by Fengzhou's words, and his mood soared. Especially when he saw Fengzhou place the pill bottle in his hand, he coughed lightly and said with a forced expression, "All right then. Since you're so considerate, I'll accept it. Manager Qian, I want to ask, what kind of existence is this Senior Marshal Brother Chen in Three Yang Peak?" Although she had been flattering him, she really knew nothing about this Senior Marshal Brother Chen. Hearing this, the corner of Manager Qian's mouth twitched. He glanced at Fengzhou and said, "So you're saying that you've never heard of his name?" She was so good at flattering him that he thought he knew him. Ha! She laughed embarrassedly and scratched her head a little embarrassedly. "Today is the first time I've seen him. I also heard the steward call him Senior Marshal Brother Chen, so I followed suit." Cough. Manager Qian coughed lightly and put away the medicinal pill with a flip of his hand. Only then did he clasp his hands behind his back and said, "Senior Brother Chen's full name is Chen Dao. He's a relative of our sect's Grand Elder. His status in the sect is special. It's your fortune to be able to catch his eye." At this point, he paused for a moment before he continued, "He has a strange personality, and his behavior is unreasonable. Not many people in the Three Yang Peak are worthy of his attention. Moreover, his refining skills are quite outstanding. Due to his status, apart from founding Master 3 Yang, everyone in the 3 Yang Peak has to be respectful to him. I see. Thank you for your guidance, Manager Qian. She cupped her hands and said, I won't disturb Steward Qian any further. I'll go stand guard at the herb field. Manager Qian nodded and said, Go on. If there's anything you don't understand, you can ask me in the future. Since she had taken his things, she naturally had to take good care of him. Otherwise, it would be somewhat inexcusable. After he left, Fengjiu narrowed her eyes and a smile appeared on her face. Only then did she walk towards the herb field. Chapter 1390. What's that? She was stunned for a moment as she saw the round thing scurrying around the spiritual herb field. She immediately rushed forward to take a look and saw that the thing with green feathers on its head was actually a chicken. A green feathered chicken. Is it a chicken? She was a little dumbfounded. That thing had the body of a chicken, but the only difference was that its feathers were green. There was a green tuft on its head and its body was also a glossy green. However, its body was as round as a balloon, and under that round body, there were 2 chicken claws. 7th level beast. The corner of her mouth twitched slightly. This was a bird and a beast, and it was a 7th level beast. Cluck cluck cluck. Just as she said the word 7th level beast, in shock, she saw the green feathered chicken eating the red-tongued spirit leaf grass raise its head and cry at her. That cluck 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 sound in her ears was as if it was scolding her for calling it a beast. She saw the round green feathered chicken open its beak to pick up the most tender leaf of the red-tongued spirit leaf grass and eat it. She hurriedly regained her senses and shouted sternly, Green feathers, stop eating. She pounced forward to grab that green feathered chicken, but who knew that with a flap of its wings, it actually flew up and leaped a few meters away. It can even fly. Is this a chicken or a bird? She looked in shock at the green feathered chicken that was spreading its wings at her in a show of force. She saw it stretch its neck and raise its head, opening its beak to pick up the tender leaf of the red-tongued spirit leaf grass. You're still eating. You really think that I can't do anything to you? She rolled up her sleeves and stealthily approached from behind. She then pounced forward and grabbed with both hands. Cluck cluck cluck. Cluck cluck cluck. The green feathered chicken flapped its wings and flew up, raising its head and chirping loudly. Fengjiu watched as it proudly landed at another spot and began to eat the red-tongued spirit leaf grass again. Seeing this, Fengjiu raised her eyebrows and the corners of her mouth curled into a malicious smile. You're still eating? All right. You're the one who forced me to do this. As she finished speaking, she walked closer again. This time, she pretended to pounce forward but stopped at the same time. When the green feathered chicken flapped its wings and flew up, a silver needle shot out with a whoosh. Cluck cluck. After letting out 2 chicken cries, the green feathered chicken flapped its wings and fell from midair. Fengjiu stood on her toes and leaped forward to catch it. Heh, I still can't catch you this time. She proudly raised her chin and patted the green feathered chicken. When her hand landed on its body, the feeling she got from it made her slightly surprised. This meat. Inexplicably, she swallowed her saliva and stared at the green feathered chicken in her hand. Her eyes lit up. If you were to eat a 7th grade beast, how different would the taste be? Cluck 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 cluck. The green feathered chicken raised its head and chirped, as if it was terrified. It struggled and flapped its wings in an attempt to escape. However, it was caught by Fengjiu. How could it escape just because it wanted to? Thus, Fengjiu stared at the chicken feather in his hand and murmured, steamed, boiled, or roasted it, or stewed it, or fried it. Which taste would be better? Her idea was very simple. Since it was a type of animal, it was naturally edible. Moreover, even if the green feathered chicken was a 7th level spiritual bird, it was still a chicken. After plucking its feathers and processing it, it would only be food to fill the stomach. Chapter 1391. It's an egg. She blinked her eyes and looked at the struggling green feather chicken in her hand. You have an egg. You're wearing a green hat on your head and you're actually a female. I thought you were a male. She originally wanted to take advantage of the fact that there was no one around to deal with the chicken and eat it, but when she touched the egg in the green feather chicken's stomach, she couldn't help but sigh. Forget it, you can go. Don't come again. If you come again, I won't let you go. She put the green feather chicken on the ground and signaled for it to leave quickly. After all, it was a 7th level spiritual bird. Although it didn't have spiritual wisdom like the sacred beasts, it still understood people's thoughts. At this time, seeing Fingzhou catch it and then let it go, it couldn't help but cry out. It circled around her and refused to leave. Still not leaving. Fingzhou raised her eyebrows and looked at the green feather chicken circling around her feet. She whispered, "Are you a wild one? Or a free-range one? Still not leaving? If you don't leave, I'll regret it." Thinking that a pot of fragrant chicken soup was gone just like that, she sighed and found a place to sit down. She took out pastries from her space and ate them. If there was no meat, then eat pastries. Just make do. Ge. The green feather chicken circled around Fingzhou and cried out. It stared at the pastries in her hand and refused to leave. You want to eat? Fingzhou raised her eyebrows. She crushed some pastries and put them in the palm of her hand. Eat. As soon as her voice fell, she saw the green feather chicken stretch its neck and peck at the pastries in her hand. Every time the chicken pecked at the pastries, it brought a numb feeling to her palm. She couldn't help but withdraw her hand and reveal a smile. She fed the green feather chicken while looking at the surrounding medicinal field. Other than this green feather chicken that came out of nowhere, the others were quiet and there weren't any snakes that came to make trouble. Seeing this, she narrowed her eyes and was about to doze off. However, at this time, she suddenly heard a voice. That's Fingzhou. Fingzhou. Her half-closed eyes quickly opened. Listening to the voice, it seemed to be Senior Brother Qin. Puzzled, he poked his head out to take a look. Sure enough, it was him. He quickly stood up and walked out. Senior Brother Qin. You're here. Come, come. Qin Dao beckoned for Fingzhou to come forward. Senior Marshal Brother Qin, what are your orders? She smiled and squinted her eyes as she stepped forward and asked. She was already planning something in her head. An alchemist would always need a pill disciple by his side. If she could follow Qin Dao and become his pill disciple, perhaps it would be easier for her to meet her mother. When I was talking to you just now, I was so happy that I forgot what I came here for. When she heard this, she was stunned for a moment, then she smiled and asked, Then what is Senior Marshal Brother Qin doing here? Do you want fresh red-tongue spirit leaf grass? You know. Qin Dao glanced at Fingzhou and smiled, That's right, I want fresh red-tongue spirit leaf grass. Go get some for me, I'll wait for you here. As he spoke, he found a rock and sat down. He didn't plan to go down and pick the grass himself. Okay, Senior Marshal Brother Qin, wait a moment. I'll be right back. She turned and walked back into the medicinal field to pick the red-tongue spirit leaf grass. Although dried spirit herbs could be used, some of them weren't as effective as fresh ones. The red-tongue spirit leaf grass was one of those fresh spirit herbs. The fresher the spirit herb, the more effective it was. Chapter 1392. The red-tongue spirit leaf grass only needed to be used by pinching the 2 grass tips from the center of the leaf. The 2 grass tips were like chicken tongues, dark red in color. To pluck them, one had to pinch them at the right juncture. This way, the spiritual energy contained within the grass tips could be locked in. This spiritual medicine was a necessary ingredient for medicines like the Vitality Recovery Pill. After about half an incense stick's worth of time, she brought the grass tips she had plucked to Qingdao. Senior Marshal Brother Qin, have you seen enough? Qingdao didn't explain in detail how to pinch the grass tips. He thought that this new brat would ask him if he didn't know. He didn't expect that in just half an incense stick's worth of time, he would really pinch the grass tips out. Looking at the grass tips in front of him, he carefully examined them. His expression couldn't help but change slightly. He asked, "Didn't you say you were new?" "That's right. I just came in yesterday." She grinned. Normal servants wouldn't know how to pinch the red-tongued spirit-leafed grass. He looked at Foam 9 and stroked his funny mustache with one hand. There was an inquisitive look in the depths of his eyes. "Thank you for your praise, Senior Marshal Brother Qin." She smiled and said. Hearing this, Qingdao was startled. He asked, "When did I praise you?" Senior Marshal Brother Qin said that normal servants wouldn't know. "Doesn't that prove that I'm not a normal servant?" Her eyes were filled with craftiness. She smiled and said, "When I came in, I did my homework. I've seen the great collection of spiritual medicines. That's why I know how to pinch the red-tongued spirit-leafed grass tips to ensure that its medicinal effects don't dissipate." Oh. Hearing this, Qingdao's interest was piqued. "You've seen the great collection of spiritual medicines? There are many spiritual medicines in there. You've really seen and memorized them?" She smiled a little embarrassedly and said, "Actually, I didn't remember much. I just remembered some and didn't remember some. This red-tongued spirit-leafed grass happened to be the part that I remembered." As she spoke, she thought about it. Although guarding this medicinal field was a leisurely job, she had to stay here all the time and couldn't leave. Even walking around was a problem. That meant that she wasn't well informed. If she could change her job, seeing the sly look between the brows of the youth in front of him, that quick-wittedness, and that delicate and pretty face, he looked very likable. Now that he was answering his question, he seemed to be distracted. He couldn't help but smile and ask, "What are you thinking about?" "I was thinking that it would be great if I could change my job." Fengjiu opened his mouth to speak, as if he had been tricked. As soon as the words left his mouth, he pretended to be shocked and covered his mouth. He blinked his eyes and looked at Qingdao, who had a faint smile on his face, and smiled embarrassedly. "Senior Brother Qin, I was just saying." She lowered her head like a child who had done something wrong. Cough. Qingdao coughed lightly and asked with his hands behind his back, "Isn't it good to guard the herb field here? This job is so leisurely." Hearing his words, Fengjiu raised his head and sighed. He was a little embarrassed and a little troubled. He said, "This job really isn't leisurely. I've been sitting here for half a day and only met you, Senior Brother Qin. If Senior Brother Qin doesn't come, I don't know what to do." Hearing this, Qingdao laughed loudly and nodded. He looked like he understood. He said, "That's true. A teenager like you has a floating heart. Letting you guard this medicinal field is indeed a bit too boring." Chapter 1393. Seeing this, Qingdao smiled and said, "There's an errand job that I think suits you quite well." "Errand job?" Fengjiu's eyes lit up. It sounded like a good job. "Yes, errand job. You'll have to run up and down to deliver spiritual medicine or carry things for people." Qingdao stroked his mustache and said, "If you think it's okay, I'll go back and say it for you." "All right, definitely. Then I'll thank Senior Brother Qin in advance," she said happily, cupping her hands and bowing to him. Qingdao nodded and took the spiritual medicine. He said, "Wait for the news." After saying that, he walked away. Seeing this, Fengjiu grinned and laughed. She was instantly energized. Running errands like delivering spiritual medicine might allow her to go to some places above. Moreover, she could get more information. Thinking of this, she happily hummed a little tune. But at this moment, she heard a hurried gurgling sound. Turning around to look, she saw a level 8 silver snake with its mouth wide open, attacking the green-feathered chicken that hadn't left yet. Snake. She was slightly surprised and hurriedly went forward to take a look. She saw that the snake and the chicken were fighting. Due to the difference in rank, the rank 7 silver snake seemed to have the upper hand in battle. However, the green-feathered chicken did not show any weakness. It raised its neck and cried out. At the same time, it flapped its wings and flew up. At the same time, its chicken claws flashed and slashed towards the rank 7 silver snake with a fierce aura. Cluck cluck cluck. Hiss. Seeing that the snake and the chicken were fighting and that many of the spiritual medicine around them were destroyed, her expression changed slightly. She quickly went forward and shouted, "Stop. If you want to fight, fight somewhere else. Don't destroy those spiritual medicine." However, the two beasts acted as if they didn't hear her at all and directly ignored her. Especially the silver snake, it even swept a warning glance at Fengjiu as if it was demonstrating its power. The snake's tail curled and swung again, slapping away the fluttering green fur. Bang! Green Feather's round body was like a ball as it fell to the ground and bounced back up. Its chicken feet and head had already shrunk when it fell to the ground. Its entire body was round like a ball as it rolled down for a distance. After making sure there was no danger, it stretched out its head. Cluck cluck cluck. The feathers on the green-feathered chicken's head and neck stood up in anger. Each strand of feathers were like green spikes. It raised its head and cried, flapping its wings. It rushed forward and once again fought with the silver snake. It was the first time she saw a snake and chicken fight. Fengjiu was very surprised. If she was not worried that the snake and chicken would destroy too many spiritual medicine, she would really want to continue watching. However, when she thought that green-feathered chicken still had an egg and those spiritual medicine that had been trampled on, she gave up. "You're not obedient. Fine, then you asked for it." As Fengjiu spoke, she bent down and picked up 2 pieces of broken stones. She weighed the stones in her hand. She saw that the silver snake suddenly jumped up and opened its mouth, as if it wanted to swallow the green-feathered chicken whole. Hence, the 2 stones in her hand shot out. Whoosh! Bang bang! A sharp sound rang out, and 2 subtle sounds of collision were heard. One of the 2 stones hit the snake's weak spot, and the other knocked out a poisonous fong in the snake's mouth. Hiss hiss. Chapter 1394. Hiss. In the end, the snake had no choice but to let out a hiss and quickly fled. Kakik. A certain proud green-feathered chicken flapped its wings and stood on a rock. It raised its head and crowed a few times as if to say, "I won against that snake." Seeing this, Fengjiu could only secretly shake her head. She went forward to deal with the stepped spiritual herbs. At this moment, the green-feathered chicken came to her side and wandered around. "Shoo shoo shoo, go away. Don't bother me." She pushed the green-furred beast away, while planting the spiritual herbs that could still be straightened and cleaning up the ones that had been trampled to death. Kakik thought perhaps it knew that Fengjiu wouldn't kill it, hence, the green-feathered chicken circled around her and crowed. However, it didn't dare to have any ideas about the red-tongued spiritual leaf grass. A day passed in leisure. Fengjiu was lying on a rock and taking a nap. A green-feathered chicken was squatting next to her. It stretched out its head and looked around, as if it was a sentry, paying attention to the surrounding movements. In the evening, another odd job worker came to take over her duty. Hence, she returned to the stone cave to rest. Who would have thought that while she was walking in front, the green-furred cat was also following closely behind her with its splayed feet. Every step she took, it would also take a few steps. When its round body moved, it looked very clumsy. "Why are you following me?" If you continue to follow me, be careful that I'm too hungry and stew you. Fengzhou glanced back and warned. Kikik. What responded to her was the excited cry of the green-feathered chicken. It folded its wings, raised its head, and swaggered behind Fengzhou. Seeing this, Fengzhou didn't bother about it. Not long after she returned to the cave, she heard Manager Qian's voice from outside. She walked out of the stone cave and bowed in front of Manager Qian. Manager Qian. Manager Qian glanced at her and said, "Today, Senior Brother Qian came to find me and said that he would help you to run errands. From tomorrow onwards, you will report to the third peak. There's a fatty there whose surname is Li. He'll arrange things for you." With that, he turned and left. Hearing this, Fengzhou could not help but grin. Chen Dao's efficiency was quite high. The next morning, she woke up early and went to the third level to report. As soon as she walked in, she heard a fat middle-aged man scolding, "These brats are getting more and more outrageous. It's already so late, and no one has come. The sun is almost at their butts, and they're all so lazy. They're not cut out for work." When Fengzhou heard this, she stopped in her tracks. She glanced at the middle-aged fatty and called out, "Is this Manager Li?" "I'm Fengzhou. Manager Qian asked me to report here." The middle-aged fatty turned around and saw the green-robed youth standing there. He grabbed a basket from the side and walked forward to stuff it into Fengzhou's hands. "Since you're here to report, send this basket of herbs to the 7th cave abode from the left on the 5th peak. And this herb, go to the 3rd cave abode on the 6th peak quickly." "Oh." She was stunned for a moment, then happily responded. She took the basket and walked out. The cave abodes on the 5th and 6th peaks were all for alchemists. She could take advantage of this opportunity to take a look. She really wanted to know how good the alchemists of the Danyang sect were. Chapter 1395. Stepping into the 5th peak, the medicinal fragrance in the air became even stronger. Perhaps it was because she had arrived too early, or perhaps it was because every cave abode had set up a barrier, so she did not hear the sound of pills being refined. Instead, she could smell the medicinal fragrance that filled the air. Counting from the left, the 7th cave abode. She murmured softly, looking at the cave abodes. Finally, her gaze fell on the 7th cave abode. Walking outside, she saw an apprentice alchemist guarding it. "I'm here to deliver spirit herbs," she said, holding the basket in her hand. "Ha! Someone else." The apprentice alchemist looked at Fengzhou in surprise. After looking her up and down, he said, "Come in." As he spoke, he led her inside to the place where the spirit herbs were placed. Walking into the cave abode, Fengzhou couldn't help but sigh in her heart. Sure enough, alchemists were treated differently. From the outside, this cave abode looked like a cave entrance, but inside, it was a different world. Moreover, there were several rooms, which should be a resting area, an alchemy room, and a bathroom. Any one of these rooms was much larger than the cave abode where she worked. After entering, she heard the sounds of alchemy in the alchemy room. There seemed to be someone muttering something wrong again, and so on. "All right, just put the spirit herbs here. I'll send them to the alchemy room later," the apprentice said, letting Fengzhou leave the spirit herbs behind. "Okay." She took out the spirit herbs. Only the last one was left, and said, "Then I'll leave first. I still have to deliver spirit herbs to other places." "Go." The apprentice alchemist nodded. After watching Fengzhou leave, he tidied up the spirit herbs and brought them to the alchemy room. Fengzhou didn't immediately go to the 6th peak. Instead, she walked around the 5th peak to familiarize herself with the place. Only then did she go to the 6th peak. When she arrived at the 3rd cave abode on the 6th peak, she didn't see any alchemist standing guard outside. Thus, she called out, "Is anyone here? I'm here to deliver spirit herbs." Jingjiu still didn't reply. She thought for a moment, then walked inside. However, as soon as she stepped into the cave, she saw an alchemy apprentice lying on the ground. The smell of medicine still lingered in the air. Her expression changed when she smelled the medicine, and she quickly went forward to check. Based on her physique, these medicines would not have any effect on her, but if she breathed in the smell of this medicine, she would faint at best and her consciousness would be damaged at worst. Since this was a pill master's cave dwelling, then she should know the medicinal properties of this medicine, so how did she end up like this? Puzzled, she dragged the alchemy apprentice outside, then walked further in. When she arrived at the alchemy room, she saw another person lying on the ground. Compared to the unconscious alchemy apprentice outside, this person's body had traces of the explosion. Clearly, he had been injured by the fragments of the alchemy furnace. He was bleeding profusely, and his breathing was weak. She quickly stepped forward and moved him out of the cave so that he could breathe fresh air. Only then did she check on his physical condition. Then, she simply treated his wounds before quickly calling for help. Men! Something happened, one of the alchemists is injured. She shouted as she ran. The distance between each cave residence was at least 50 meters. When she shouted, some alchemy apprentices heard her and rushed over to help. In the end, several alchemy apprentices, including her, sent the two people to the pharmacy for treatment. Chapter 1396. As an alchemist, he actually almost refined himself into a pill refinement master. This was really amazing. She shook her head inwardly, finding it unbelievable. Since he was a pill master, he should know how much to add to each pill. What time? How long would it take to refine after adding the ingredients? Even if the cauldron exploded, he should have known beforehand and had time to avoid it. She couldn't learn how to make the cauldron explode and almost get himself killed. You're the servant who delivered the pills. Suddenly, a voice sounded. She raised her head and saw an elderly man walking towards her. Yes, I'm here to deliver the pills. She stood up and replied. Very good. They were lucky to have met you today. Otherwise, they would have lost their lives if they had been delayed for another half an incense stick's time. The elderly man stroked his beard as he spoke. He looked at Fengzhou and asked suspiciously, You said the cauldron exploded. Then how did you get in? Why are you fine? Ah. Fengzhou blinked and said, What do you mean I'll be fine after going in? I didn't make the cauldron explode. Of course I'll be fine. No. What I mean is, why are you fine after smelling the medicinal fragrance? That's 7 rest grass. If used well, it can save lives. However, if Pill Master Ku made the cauldron explode, the medicinal fragrance must be too strong. Otherwise, he wouldn't have gotten himself into such a state. Even the pill apprentice who went in fainted. Oh, that. She suddenly said, That's because the medicinal fragrance had already dissipated when I went in. Furthermore, I only smelled a little bit. It should be fine. Hearing this, the elderly man nodded and said, What's your name? You saved a lot of people today. I'll get someone to record it. My name is Fengzhou. She smiled and said. Fengzhou. All right, I got it. You can go about your business. The elderly man said and gestured for Fengzhou to leave. Seeing this, Fengzhou bowed and left. She then went to the place where the pills were distributed and found the fat steward. After telling him about what happened, she took a few baskets of pills and distributed them. A busy day passed by. She used the opportunity of delivering spirit herbs as an opportunity to walk up and down and familiarize herself with the 3-yang peak. In the evening, when she was walking back with the basket, she caught a glimpse of a figure stepping on a flying sword and heading up the peak. Looking at the beautiful woman in white who was riding on the sword and standing quietly against the wind, she couldn't help but stop in her tracks and stare blankly. That face. That face looked somewhat similar to her eyes, and that face was exactly the same as the Shangwan Wanru she had seen before. Was that her mother? She couldn't help but feel agitated. She opened her mouth and wanted to shout out loud, but her lips moved, but no sound came out. Perhaps Fengzhou's gaze was too intense, it attracted the attention of Shangwan Wanru, who was flying on her sword. She slowed down in the air and lowered her head slightly to look down. She immediately saw the young man in green. It was just a glance, but she withdrew her gaze and continued to fly. Not long after, that graceful figure disappeared from Fengzhou's sight just like that. That was her mother. She was even more beautiful in person than in the portrait. However, as she flew through the air, she brushed past her just like that. Chapter 1397. Half a month later. Fengzhou, senior brother Zhang from the 6th peak specifically asked you to deliver the medicine. Fengzhou, deliver the medicine from the 5th peak as well. Fengzhou, you've reached the standard for your reward. You can redeem your reward when you return. Fengzhou, your green-feathered chicken is here again. Hurry up and call it over. Don't mess up the medicine that I've picked. Fengzhou. Cluck cluck cluck. The courtyard was bustling with activity. There were the voices of the odd job workers, the voices of the stewards arranging matters, and the cluck of the chicken. But the one that was called the most was the 2 words, Fengzhou. I'm coming, I'm coming. Don't rush me, one by one. Fengzhou ran in from behind and finished a fruit in a few bites. Because she was the fastest at delivering the medicine and had never made a mistake, she even rushed to deliver the medicine that others were unwilling to deliver. Thus, in half a month's time, she got along well with everyone here. Cluck cluck cluck. In less than half a month's time, the green-feathered chicken's body had almost doubled in size. The green feathers on its body had also become glossier. As for its egg, half a month had passed and it still hadn't been born. However, it followed Fengzhou around all day long, so everyone knew that this green-feathered chicken with a green hat was Fengzhou's spiritual bird. Green hair. Can you stop making noise? It's not early in the morning, why are you making noise? Go away, go away. I'm very busy. Don't come over and bother me. Fengzhou chased it away as she put the medicine into the basket. Cluck cluck cluck, cluck cluck cluck. Green hair flapped its wings and walked out. It didn't continue to wander around the courtyard. Fengzhou. Is Fengzhou here? Someone shouted loudly. Yes, yes, I'm here. I'm here. She waved her hand without raising her head. When the person saw that he was busy, he quickly walked forward and handed the basket in his hand to him. This is what Master's Junior Shangwan wants. Take it to the 8th summit and give it to her. Hearing this, Fengzhou, who was holding the medicinal ingredients, paused. He raised his head to look at the person who had come and asked, Martial Uncle Shangwan. Is he the last disciple of the 3 Sons Grandmaster? Look at what you're asking. Other than her, how many people in our 3 Yang Peak have the surname Shangwan? That person smiled and said, that's right, it's her. I should have sent her personally, but didn't I have to make a trip down the mountain? It just so happens that you're going to deliver the medicine, so help me deliver it while you're at it. Her medicine isn't in a hurry, so you can just deliver the rest along the way. He knew that Fengzhou was a new odd job disciple who had only been in the sect for half a month. However, because of his good performance and the good impression that the alchemists had of him, someone had already suggested for him to follow the alchemists as a pill apprentice. Thus, he felt more at ease with him delivering the medicine. Hearing this, Fengzhou's eyes lit up. He hurriedly took the basket. Senior Brother Gua, don't worry, don't worry. I'll definitely do this well. If there's anything like this in the future, just leave it to me. I love delivering medicine to everyone. Ha ha ha, good, good. Then I'll have to trouble you. I'll bring you something when I come back. The man with the surname Guo laughed loudly. He patted Fingzhou's shoulder and turned to leave. Chapter 1398. She first sent the spiritual herbs that she needed to use in other places to the people. After walking around a few times, she went to the 8th peak. She had been here for more than half a month, and this was the first time she had the opportunity to step into the 8th peak. Unlike other places, only a few of 3 Yangzi's disciples lived on the 8th summit. It was also because of this that outsiders were not allowed to disturb them without being summoned. As for the people who delivered the spirit herbs, they were instructed by someone to deliver them. As for her mother, during this half a month, she had heard that her mother spent very little time concocting pills. This was because she rarely gave orders for pills to be sent up. It seemed that concocting pills was not something she did every day. Since she was 3 Yangzi's last disciple, she should have taken a fancy to her talent in refining pills. However, why did she spend less time refining pills when she came here? If it was anyone else, they would definitely study the Tao of pills wholeheartedly. After all, as 3 Yangzi's last disciple, she could use the spiritual herbs she needed at will without needing to exchange for them. She walked up the stairs to the 8th peak. As soon as she stepped in, her expression changed slightly. There was a formation and barrier set up inside. When she passed through the barrier, the jade tablet on her waist flashed, allowing her to naturally walk into the barrier. If it weren't for the subtle ripples that brushed past her body like water, she would almost not have felt it. The spirit arrays were distributed around the cave residences on this layer of the mountain. Compared to the cave residences of the alchemists below, the spirit arrays here were much more powerful. In the past half a month, she also found out that other than 3 Yangzi, the peak master of 3 Yangzi, who was a peak nascent soul cultivator, 4 of his 5 disciples, including her mother, were all peak golden core cultivators. It was said that the eldest disciple was a tier 5 alchemy saint, the second and third disciples were tier 3 alchemy saints, and the 4th disciple was a tier 7 alchemy grandmaster. As for his mother, she was only a tier 5 alchemy grandmaster. Pill masters were ranked from pill apprentice, pill master, pill ancestor, pill sage, Dan Wang, pill immortal, pill venerable, and pill deity. They were divided into 7 ranks, and the higher the rank, the harder it was to advance. The Danyang sect was the number 1 alchemy sect in the 8 great empires. The sect master's alchemy level was at most level 5 Dan immortal realm. Below that was the level of the peak masters of the various peaks. Most of the peak masters in charge of the various peaks were Dan immortal S of the 1st to 3rd stage, and even 3 Yangzi was only a 3rd stage Dan immortal. However, it was extremely difficult for him to advance any further. Alchemists focused on refining pills, so they naturally neglected their cultivation. This was also the reason why in the 8 great empires that were filled with experts, even though they had a high rank and status as alchemists, their cultivation couldn't even compare to some of the people from the mid-level clans outside. It was estimated that if they didn't know how to refine pills, it would be difficult for them to reach this level in terms of cultivation level. After all, everyone specialized in one area. It would be difficult for them to take care of other areas if they were to achieve good results in one area. Of course, a genius like Fengzhou could only be called a genius. What was a genius? Out of thousands of geniuses, only one could become a ghost. In addition to what she had learned in her previous life, she had also worked hard to learn things that she had never come into contact with before in this life. Otherwise, she would not have been able to gather so many skills in one body like today. Chapter 1399. She raised her head and saw a man in his 20s standing in front of a cave residence, sizing her up. Seeing this, she walked forward and caught a glimpse of an identity jade token on his waist and an alchemist badge on his chest. She then bowed and said, "Greetings, senior martial brother. I'm here to deliver spiritual herbs, but this is my first time here. May I know where martial uncle Shengwan's cave residence is?" In the Danyang sect, the disciples all addressed each other as Senior Martial Brother and Junior Martial Brother, regardless of the level of alchemist. The only difference was that every peak master had to be addressed as Ancestral Master, and the disciples of the peak masters had to be addressed as Martial Uncle. Delivering spiritual herbs. The man stared at Fingzhou for a while and asked, "Wasn't this supposed to be Junior Martial Brother Guo's job? Why did you suddenly change?" "It's like this, Senior Martial Brother Guo had something to do and went down the mountain, so I'm here to deliver the herbs to Martial Uncle Shengwan." Hearing this, the man nodded and said, "And, since it's your first time here, don't walk around randomly. Follow this path and the cave residence at the end will be Martial Uncle Shengwan's cave residence." "Thank you, Senior Martial Brother." She smiled and thanked him. The man glanced at Fingzhou and said, "However, I just saw Martial Uncle Shengwan being called by the Ancestral Master's alchemist apprentice. Maybe she's not in the cave residence right now. There's a barrier around the cave residence, and Martial Uncle Shengwan doesn't have an alchemist apprentice with her, so I guess you can't go in." "Ah. Is that so?" She was stunned for a moment, then showed a simple and honest smile. "It's okay, then I'll wait outside Martial Uncle Shengwan's cave residence for her to come back. Anyway, I've already delivered the herbs from other places, so there's nothing urgent now." Hearing this, the man coughed and his eyes flashed. He said, "Actually, you can also leave the herbs here. When Martial Uncle Shengwan comes back, I'll bring them to her for you." Hearing this, Fengzhou's eyes moved slightly. He felt strange, but he didn't show it on his face. He put on a simple and honest smile and pretended that he didn't understand. "It's okay, I have nothing to do anyway. It's okay to wait for a while. If I let Senior Brother do it for me, it would be my fault. If this delays Senior Brother's matter, or if Senior Brother Guo knows that I asked Senior Brother for help, he will definitely scold me." The man tried to say something, but he was interrupted by Fingzhou. "Martial Brother's cave residence, Martial Uncle's cave residence." She looked curiously at the cave residence behind the man and said, "It's so big. My master's surname is Duan. He's the eldest disciple of Ancestral Master Three Yangs." When he said those words, a hint of arrogance appeared between the man's brows. "So it's Martial Uncle Duan's cave residence, no wonder it's so extraordinary." She immediately said with admiration, "I heard that Martial Uncle Duan's pill rank is the highest among Martial Uncle Shengwan's disciples, so amazing. Since Martial Uncle Duan is your disciple, your pill refining talent must also be at the level of a prodigy." "Oh right, I'm Fingzhou, how should I address you?" Hearing Fingzhou's words, the man became even more proud, and the corners of his mouth couldn't help but curl up. He glanced at Fingzhou and coughed, then said modestly, "Our Danyang sect is the #1 pill refining sect in the 8 great empires. There are many prodigies in the sect, and I'm not worthy of being called a prodigy." He paused and continued, "When you see me in the future, just call me Martial Brother Hu." "Yes, Martial Brother Hu." Chapter 1400. Her eyes flickered, and following his gaze, she saw a white figure riding a flying sword towards the cave behind. That figure was graceful and delicate, and her white clothes were elegant and serene. Coupled with her outstanding appearance, she could not help but make people's eyes light up. "Ah! Martial Aunt Shengwan is back," she said in surprise. After seeing that the figure had disappeared, she came back to her senses and looked at Senior Brother Hu in front of her. A dark light flashed through her eyes, and she said, "Senior Brother Hu, I have to go deliver the herbs. Let's have a good chat when we have time. I'll be leaving first." Fengzhou said as he waved his hand, then turned and left, walking in the direction behind. That was her mother. Looking at her up close, she was even clearer. However, he seemed to have become a little colder, like a pool of stagnant water without any ripples, giving people a feeling of deathly stillness and coldness. Seeing her like that, her heart ached slightly. She must have missed her and her father so much. However, now that she was here, and she was also the last disciple of 3 Yangtze, if she said she wanted to go out of the sect to gain experience, she should be allowed. This way, she could go to the Phoenix Dynasty to see them. However, looking at her, it seemed like her heart was filled with doubts, and she walked briskly towards the back. When she arrived in front of the cave, her figure was already gone. She stood outside the cave and hesitated for a moment. Martial Aunt Shangwan, I'm a disciple who came to deliver the herbs. She raised her voice and shouted twice. She nervously looked at the Immortal's cave. Perhaps her voice had reached the Immortal's cave. Not long after, the enchantment in front of the Immortal's cave dispersed. Shangwan Wanrong's indifferent voice came from inside. Come in. Fengjiu was delighted. Just as he was about to step in, he suddenly saw another person beside him. He turned his head to look, and his expression stiffened. Senior brother Hu. Why are you here? What was this person doing here? This was not his master's cave. I obtained some spirit fruits a few days ago, so I'm bringing some over for Martial Aunt Shangwan. He looked inside the cave and said. Spirit fruits. You can give them to me and bring them to Martial Aunt Shangwan. At this time, Fengjiu finally noticed that he was carrying a basket with a few fruits in it. How can that be? That's too rude. As he spoke, his gaze swept over Fengjiu. Alright, let's go. Don't be long-winded here. As he said that, he walked in first. Fengjiu behind him helplessly, he glanced at senior brother Hu, and could only follow him in. At this time, if she still couldn't see through senior brother Hu's intentions. However, senior Shangwan Wanru, senior brother Hu, Shangwan Wanru, Shangwan Wanru, Shangwan Wanru, Shangwan Wanru, and Shangwan Wanru. She cast a sidelong glance at senior martial brother Hu was excitedly walking inside. She put away her expression and walked inside with a grin on her face. When she entered the cave, she saw a white figure sitting at the stone table drinking tea. Her expression was indifferent, as if she didn't care about anything. Even when they came in, she didn't raise her eyes to look at them. She only indifferently said, just put the spirit herbs on the shelf. Greetings, Martial Aunt Shangwan. Senior brother Hu put on an act and bowed, and said with a fawning expression, Martial Aunt Shangwan, it's me. We've met once before. Chapter 1401. Shangwan Wanrong glanced at him and frowned. She said indifferently, there's no need. Take your things and leave. She directly asked him to leave without giving him any face. Senior Hu's expression stiffened and he looked as if he couldn't get out of the situation. Martial Aunt Shangwan. Get out. Bang. This time, his voice was even colder. He slammed his hand heavily on the stone table, causing a loud bang. Fengjiu, who was standing at the side, had been paying attention. When he saw the wound on her wrist when she slammed the table, his eyes flashed and his expression changed. Wound. How could there be a wound? She was in 3 Yang Peak and she was the direct disciple of 3 Yangtze. How could there be a wound on her body? Her gaze was fixed on her wrist. That wound seemed to be new. Moreover, it looked like a whip wound, but it didn't really look like a whip wound. Just as she was thinking, she saw Senior Hu's face darken because he couldn't get out of the situation. He picked up the basket and said in a slightly angry tone, I've disturbed Martial Aunt. I'll leave now. As soon as he finished speaking, he turned around and left. He even stopped and glanced at Fengjiu. Why are you still standing there like an idiot? Put down the spiritual herbs and come out with me. Ah. But it wasn't easy for her to come here. How could she leave just like that? Give me the herbs. A voice was heard. Fengjiu looked up and saw his mother standing in front of him. His lips moved slightly and he wanted to call out, Mother, but he forced himself to hold it back. She gathered her thoughts and stared straight into Senior Hu's eyes. A smile bloomed on her face and her voice was clear and cheerful as she said, "Martial Aunt, my name is Fingzhou. Your surname is Feng." She was slightly startled as she looked at the young man who had a pure smile on his face. She saw the young man's clear and bright eyes looking at her. She saw the strange look of admiration in his eyes and her heart couldn't help but tremble. She only felt that this young man gave her an inexplicably strange feeling. He was clearly someone she hadn't met before, but she felt an inexplicable sense of familiarity. This feeling made her indifferent and cold expression warm up a little. Her entire face also softened. Her surname was Feng. Such a familiar yet distant surname. "Yes, my surname is Feng. Senior Gua had something to do and left the mountain, so it's my turn to deliver the herbs." She had the urge to tell her that her father's name was Feng Shao, but she was afraid that she would be caught off guard and shock her. Moreover, why was there a new wound on her hand? She had to investigate this matter thoroughly. "And let's go," she said and took the medicine basket from Fingzhou. "Yes." She bowed and replied. After taking a deep look at her, she turned and walked out. She told herself that there was no need to rush. There was no need to rush to reunite with her mother. They were both at Three Yang Peak, so there would be plenty of opportunities. The two of them walked outside, and the barrier was activated again, isolating them from the outside world. After walking out, Fingzhou turned around to take a look and heard the man's surname Hu's strange voice. "Uncle Master Shengguan's attitude towards you seems to be better than mine." Hearing this, Fingzhou was startled. Her expression immediately turned cold. How could that be? "Senior Martial Brother Hu, you're thinking too much. This is the first time I've seen Martial Uncle Shengguan, and I'm just an errand boy." Martial Uncle Shengguan only asked one more question because he was curious why the person who delivered the medicine was changed. Chapter 1402. Hearing those words, Fingzhou watched as the man with the surname Hu left. The corners of her mouth twitched, revealing a strange smile. She reached out her hand and flicked her sleeve, only to see a dust-like powder fall to the ground and disappear without a trace. On her way back, she went to exchange for her reward, then returned to the mountain peak to deliver medicinal ingredients for everyone. Just like that, a busy day passed. In the evening, when she was on her way back to the cave residence, she saw Senior Gua, who had just returned, walking towards her with a smile. "Fingzhou, thank you for delivering the medicinal ingredients for me today. Come, this is what I brought back for you." As he spoke, he handed her a basket with an oiled paper bag. Before Fingzhou opened it, she smelled the fragrance and her eyes couldn't help but brighten. She said in surprise, "Senior Gua, is this roasted chicken?" "Haha, that's right. The people on the mountain are not greedy. You, on the other hand, don't eat the fasting pills and only like to eat these things. I can't afford those spiritual animals, but I can buy this roast chicken for you. Senior Gua, you really understand my heart. Thank you, this is really the best thing," she said happily, then asked, "Did Senior Gua just come back? Do you want to come to my place for a drink or two?" "Oh. You still have wine?" He was a little surprised. "Yes, as Senior Gua gave it to me a few days ago, there's a big jar. I didn't drink it." She grinned, "Since there's roasted chicken, it'll go well with wine. What's more, it's time to eat. If that's the case, then all right, we'll go to your place to drink. Let's go." He nodded with a smile and walked with her to the cave residence. In the cave residence, the two drank wine and ate roasted chicken at the stone table while chatting. From the initial sobriety to drunkenness, they drank a third of the jar of wine. Come, continue drinking, let's finish this cup." As Fingzhou spoke, she raised her cup and drank another mouthful of wine, then poured more wine for him. Looking at the drunk Senior Gua, Fingzhou grinned. Gua, Senior Gua, you're drunk. How is that possible? I'm not drunk, not drunk. Come on, let's continue drinking. He waved his hand, but his eyes were blurry, his face was red, and his words were slurred. It was obvious that he was drunk. Seeing this, Fingzhou said casually, Senior Martial Brother Gua, Grandmaster Three Sons really treats Martial Uncle Shengwan very well. The cave she lives in is much bigger than the one we live in. Well, it's good to say that, but you're new here, so you don't know. The last disciple, they only talk about it verbally. There's no ceremony, and, that he burped and continued, the few of us who send the pills to the peak all know that Ancestral Master Three Sons is very strict. If he is not satisfied with the pills refined by the 5 martial uncles, he will even punish them. Ah. Is that so? Wouldn't he be beaten if he was punished? She said in astonishment, only to see him shaking his head drowsily. Not long after, his entire body fell to the ground. Senior Martial Brother Gua. She called out and pushed him. Seeing that he had fallen asleep, she could only sigh and let him sleep. Chapter 1403. The next morning, Fingzhou went to work because Senior Guo was still hungover. As soon as she entered the courtyard, the fat manager greeted her with a smile. I knew you'd be the first one to come. Come here, come here. Good morning, manager. She stepped forward with an obedient look and bowed respectfully. Then, she looked at the fat manager with a smile. All right, you went to the 8th summit yesterday. Here, this is the spiritual medicine that the 8th summit's martial uncle Duan needs. Go get it and quickly send it to him. He handed a piece of paper with the spiritual medicine written on it to Fingzhou. When Fingzhou heard this, she happily replied, all right. She could go to the 8th summit early in the morning and see if she could meet her mother. Thinking about this, she looked at the fat manager who had turned around to do other things. Her eyes flashed as she went forward and said, Manager, let me deliver all the spiritual medicine on the 8th summit in the future. I can take over everyone else's work. This way, the other senior brothers won't have to be so busy. Hearing this, the fat manager paused for a moment and turned around to look at him. He nodded, that's fine too. Although you haven't been here for long, you haven't made any mistakes. Especially when the Uncle Masters of the 8th Summit want to use medicine, you can't make any mistakes. Alright then. From now on, you'll only be in charge of the spiritual medicine on the 8th Summit. Thank you, manager. She happily thanked him. The fat manager smiled and didn't mind. From the 3rd Summit to the 8th Summit, there were times when they had to go back and forth. The other servants would sometimes complain that it was too tiring to go up and down. This kid, on the other hand, was very happy. After the manager left, Fingzhou hummed a little tune as she went to get the spiritual medicine. She placed the spiritual medicine in the basket and checked it again. After confirming that there were no mistakes, she went to the 8th Summit. She arrived at the first cave abode on the 8th Summit with great familiarity. She shouted from outside and saw Senior Brother who from yesterday walk out with an ugly expression. When she saw him, her eyes flickered and the corners of her lips curled up. Good morning, Senior Who. You're really diligent. It's so early in the morning and you're already busy. Her voice was clear and she said with a smile. Senior Who heard the voice and saw that it was Fingzhou. He couldn't help but frown. Why are you here to deliver spiritual medicine again? Where are the others? It was the same kid yesterday, and it was the same kid today. Fingzhou looked at him and didn't answer. Instead, he exclaimed, "Ah! Senior Brother Who, what happened to your eyes and lips?" His left eye and lips were red and swollen, as if they were blisters. His entire face was extremely ugly due to the swelling of his eyes and lips. If it wasn't for his dark face, it would have been even more comical. Upon hearing this, Senior Martial Brother Who's expression stiffened and he evaded Fingzhou's bewildered gaze. He said in a deep voice, "It's nothing. It's just that my virtual fire has risen a little." What was the rise of virtual fire? How could she not know what she had done? It was clearly a flare-up of heat toxins, and it would have swollen for at least 10 days. It was impossible for him to recover after 10 days of pain. Who told him to keep looking around? If he didn't teach him a lesson, he wouldn't know his place. Although she thought this in her heart, her face was full of admiration. It must be because senior apprentice brother who was too busy and didn't rest well. A disciple like senior apprentice brother who is really a role model for my generation. Senior brother who glanced at Feng Jiu when he heard that. Only then did his expression soften. "All right, give me the herbs." As he spoke, he tossed out a bottle. Chapter 1404. Feng Jiu took it and thanked him happily. "Thank you, senior brother who." Go ahead." He waved his hand and signaled for Feng Jiu to leave. "I'll take my leave first." With that, she turned around and left. After she left the cave, she could not help but look at the cave at the back and thought, "I wonder what my mother is doing." Just as she was about to take a look, she heard the voice of the man with the surname Hu. "Why are you still standing there? The people living on the 8th peak are all martial uncles. You're just a lowly servant, don't offend them. Quickly go back after you're done delivering the herbs." "Yes." She raised her voice in response before walking away. As she walked back and passed by the 7th peak, she heard a surprised voice. Aren't you that what's your name again? Feng what?" She turned her head and saw that it was Qin Dao. She went forward and bowed. "Feng Jiu greets senior brother Qin." Yes, it's Feng Jiu." Qin Dao laughed and looked Feng Jiu up and down. He asked, "Where did you go to deliver the herbs? Are you used to this task?" Hearing this, Feng Jiu smiled and said, "I'm used to it, too used to it." "It's good that you're used to it." He nodded. Seeing that Feng Jiu's basket was empty, he asked, "Are you done delivering the herbs? Do you still need to go back?" "The steward told me to only deliver the herbs on the 8th peak. I just went to the 8th peak to deliver the spiritual herbs, so I'm free now." With that, she paused and asked, "Is there something you need, senior brother Qin?" He nodded and said, "Since you're free, come with me to pick some spiritual herbs." As soon as he finished speaking, he strode forward, and motioned for Feng Jiu to follow him. Seeing this, Feng Jiu did not ask and followed him. When she saw that he had walked out of 3 Peak and went from the back of 3 Peak to the back of another peak, she curiously asked, "Senior brother Qin, where are we going to pick the spiritual herbs? Are we walking on the back mountain path?" Why did she feel like she was sneaking around? "Don't ask so many questions. Just follow me." He didn't even turn his head as he continued to walk along the path. Seeing this, and thinking about the evaluation of Qin Dao in the peak, she suddenly felt like she had been led astray. Could it be that this fellow was thinking of bringing her along to do something bad? Thinking of this, she clutched her stomach and cried, "Ouch!" Qin Dao, who was in front, heard the noise behind him. He turned around and asked, "What's wrong?" "Senior Qin, my stomach hurts. Can I?" Before he could finish his words, he was interrupted. "Your stomach hurts? Why don't you settle it here and I'll wait for you in front?" Settle it on the spot. Feng Jiu was speechless as the corners of her mouth twitched. Seeing him staring at her with a faint smile, she sighed in her heart and said helplessly, "Well, there's no need." "No need? Really? Don't you have a stomachache?" "It's okay. Anyway, it's still early. I can wait for you." As he spoke, he stroked his funny mustache. There's really no need. It doesn't seem to hurt anymore," she said embarrassedly. "All right then. But if you have a stomachache or something else and want to go back first, you can tell me." I can help you settle it.